You know, I've always wondered, what if a horror show that was as scary as this was also as cool as this? Well, lucky for me, and for you, that question has already been answered. That's right, today we're covering the story of Stranger Things. With season 5 just on the horizon, now is the perfect time to do a little catch-up recap with all the cool kids and the scary monsters in Hawkins. So, let's get into it. The show kicks off at Hawkins National Laboratory, where it's clear that something is very wrong. A scientist is running from something. He manages to make it to an elevator thinking he's safe, until he realizes the thing he was running from is already inside the elevator, and it gobbles him up. We then cut to our main characters, the outspoken group leader, Mike Wheeler, the hilarious and wholesome Dustin Henderson, the always skeptical Lucas Sinclair, and the sweetest of them all, Will Byers. They are a bunch of teenage nerds, and they make the perfect friend group. We see them knee-deep in a Dungeons & Dragons campaign at Mike's house, and they're having the time of their lives. The session has to come to an end because it's a school night, so Mike's friends get on their bikes and head home. Unfortunately for Will, someone, or something, starts chasing him on his way home. Will tries his best to get away from the monster and even grabs a shotgun. America, am I right? Unfortunately for Will, the monster sneaks up behind him, and in a flash of light, Will Byers has disappeared. Since then, stranger things have happened. The next morning, we see the police chief of Hawkins, Jim Hopper. You know those guys who just give up on life and just sail through it with minimum effort? Yep, that's Jim. For now, at least.
This is called foreshadowing.
We then cut to the Byer household. There, we meet Will's mom, Joyce Byers, and his older brother, Jonathan Byers. Joyce is a bit of a paranoid weirdo, but she loves her boys and does everything she can to give them a good life. Jonathan is also kind of a weirdo, but he's a sweet and gentle boy who's just antisocial. They realize that Will didn't come home last night, and they start panicking. Anyway, we then see Mike, Dustin, and Lucas roll up to the school. To no one's surprise, they get bullied by the cool kids because they're a bunch of nerds. They're just like me. We then see Mike's older sister, Nancy Wheeler, for the first time. Nancy is a cute, hard-working girl who recently started dating the popular guy at school, Steve Harrington. She gets teased about this by her best friend, Barbara, aka Barb, but Nancy says it's nothing serious, before making out with Steve about 60 seconds later. Later, we see Joyce visit Hopper at the station, asking him to look for Will. Hopper thinks she's overreacting. Nothing ever happens in Hawkins, but Joyce knows something's wrong, and she wants Hopper to investigate. We then cut to Hawkins National Laboratory, where we meet the soft-spoken and well-dressed Dr. Brenner. We'll learn more about Dr. Brenner soon enough. Anyway, Dr. Brenner and some shady-looking scientists go inside the lab, and it's a scene straight out of an Alien movie. They keep going deeper inside and come face to face with what I can only describe as a gate. Only this gate is breathing like it's alive. Dr. Brenner then says 2 things escaped: the monster and the girl. That's when we cut to the girl, a skin-headed little girl in a hospital gown. She's walking through the woods before she spots a restaurant and steals some food. The owner of the restaurant, Benny, catches her, but he's more confused than he is angry. Meanwhile, Mike and his friends are up to some nerd things when Hopper swings by the school to ask them some questions about Will. After getting the info he needs, he tells Will's friends to sit their butts at home and to not look for Will. Yeah, right. Kids in the 80s being told that their friend is missing and sitting put? Yeah, that's not gonna happen. We then cut to the little girl, who's devouring a burger like it's her first meal. She doesn't really speak much, but she does tell the restaurant owner her name, 11. Notable things about 11. She has the number 11 tattooed on her arm, i.e. 011, and she has a psychic superpowers. What the hell is going on here? Back with Hopper, he and some other policemen are out investigating, and they find Will's bike. We then see Joyce on the phone trying to find out where her son could go, and someone is listening in on her calls. That's when Hopper shows up with Will's bike. After looking around the house, Hopper decides to put together a search party to look for Will. Even he thinks something is wrong now. While Hopper and the search party look for Will, Mike and Nancy have to stay at home until Will is found. But Mike isn't just sitting put. He escapes to look for Will with Lucas and Dustin. Oh, and Steve sneaks into Nancy's room. Back with 11, she's just chilling at the restaurant until Dr. Brenner and his agents show up. They kill Benny, and 11 has to run off into the woods again. Before we cut to Jonathan and Joyce. They're both super depressed and are doing their best to find Will. That's when they get a call. Joyce hears breathing on the phone. It's Will! But before Will can say anything, we hear something demonic come up behind him, and the phone short circuits.
Will? Will?
Joyce just breaks down crying. What can a helpless mom even do? Meanwhile, Mike, Dustin, and Lucas start following Will's trail, and it's raining cats and dogs. They go through the forest until they find someone, but it's not Will. It's 11. And after this encounter, their lives will never, and I mean never, be the same again. The next episode kicks off with Mike and his friends bringing 11 back to Mike's house. After some discussion, they decide to hide 11 in Mike's basement for now, until they figure out what to do. So Mike gives her some clothes, makes her a bed, and she goes to sleep. The next morning, Hopper tells the Byers that they haven't found Will yet, but the search is still going strong. Meanwhile, Mike gobbles down his breakfast before bringing some food to 11. There, he realizes that 11 is not just some missing girl. She's on the run from some bad people, and those bad people are Dr. Brenner and his agents, who are still looking for 11. Also looking for her is Hopper, and we find out why he's taking this so personally. Turns out his daughter died 6 years ago, and that's why he's given up on life. Damn, that sucks. Meanwhile, Lucas and Dustin make it to school only to see that Mike isn't there. Why? Because he's at home spending time with 11. That's actually really sweet. Meanwhile, Jonathan decides to leave Hawkins to ask his dad, Lonnie, about Will. Lonnie and Joyce divorced a while ago, and Jonathan wants to see if his dad knows about Will. Meanwhile, Joyce goes out to buy a new phone. The last one got fried, remember? This means the Byers household is empty, so Dr. Brenner and his scientists show up to investigate, and they find some slimy ooze. It's proof that whatever monster they're looking for, it was there. Meanwhile, Mike is showing 11 all his stuff when she sees a picture of Mike and her friends, and that's when she points at Will. She knows who he is, but before Mike can ask her, Mike's mom Karen comes back home, so Mike hides 11 in his cupboard. Unfortunately, this gives 11 flashbacks about what happened to her at Hawkins National Lab, and let's just say she was something of a lab rat for them. But now, for the first time in her life, 11 feels safe, and it's all because of Mike. While Joyce sets up her new phone, Hopper gets called over to Benny's restaurant. There, he finds dead Benny, and suddenly Hawkins isn't such a peaceful town anymore. Meanwhile, Jonathan goes over to Lonnie, but Will isn't with him. The only thing we learn from their interaction is that Lonnie is an asshole. Meanwhile, Lucas and Dustin show up to Mike's place. Unfortunately, Lucas starts freaking out and says he's gonna go tell Karen about 11, so he opens the door, only for 11 to close it with her psychic powers.
No.
Meanwhile, Nancy comes up with an excuse to go to a party at Steve's house and asks Barb to come with her. I love how she's having a nice little romance thing in the middle of a horror show. Meanwhile, Hopper and the search party follow the little clues they have, and it leads them to Hawkins National Lab. Oh boy. While that's happening, Nancy and Barb go to Steve's house for the party, even though Barb really doesn't want to. Back with Mike, he and the boys ask 11 if she knows where Will is, so she shows them. She takes Will's character from D&D, flips the board over, and puts it there. Basically, she's saying Will is stuck in some sort of parallel dimension, and not only that, but he's hiding from a monster. Meanwhile, Jonathan heads into the woods with a camera to look for Will and to take pictures of any clues. He then stumbles upon Steve's party and starts taking pictures of Nancy instead. Okay, as nice a guy as he is, I have no defense for that. That's hella weird. Back with Joyce, she gets a call and it's from Will. Unfortunately, the phone short circuits again before she can say anything to him, and she's left crying until she sees the lights flickering. She follows them to Will's room where the music player starts playing by itself. Before Joyce can react, the wall starts stretching like someone's pushing through it from the other side, and Joyce wants to run away but decides to go back because she believes her son is trying to talk to her. Meanwhile, Nancy tells Barb to go home. She's gonna have some hanky-panky time with Steve. Instead, Barb just sits by the pool where Jonathan takes pictures of her too. That's when Jonathan's camera starts acting up, and in that moment, the same monster that took Will takes Barb, but Jonathan doesn't notice, and neither does Nancy. Damn. This next episode, we see Barb wake up in the parallel dimension 11 was talking about, but before she can even adjust, she comes face to face with the monster. She tries running away, but there really is no escaping this thing, and Barb is a goner. Rest in peace, Barb. A little while later, Nancy wakes up and decides to go home. That there is a midnight walk of shame, I tell ya. The next day, Jonathan wakes up to see Joyce talking to the lamps. Joyce knows she sounds sounds crazy, but tries to get Will to show Jonathan that he's there. Instead, Jonathan just calms Joyce down and tells her to get some sleep. You know, if only he saw what she saw, he would understand. Back with the boys, they make a plan to look for Will and tell 11 to meet them after school. Meanwhile, Nancy meets Steve at the school the next day, but she doesn't see Barb. She's not going to find her either. While Hopper and his officers head to Hawkins' lab to ask some questions, 11 is poking around Will's house. She watches TV, and it reminds her of one of the experiments Dr. Brenner made her do. Yeah, Dr. Brenner looks like one sick bastard. Meanwhile, Joyce does the exact opposite of what Jonathan told her. She gets a bunch of Christmas lights and fills her house with them, hoping it'll make Will communicate better. While she's doing that, Hopper asks questions at Hawkins' National Lab. They play all the innocent parts, but Hopper knows they're hiding something. When 11 pokes around Nancy's room, Nancy is starting to get worried about Barb, but Steve and her new friends don't seem to care that much. While Mike and the boys prepare to look for Will, Karen decides to visit Joyce with her youngest daughter, Mike and Nancy's baby sister, Holly. Meanwhile, Hopper goes to the Hawkins library to do some research on this lab, and wouldn't you know it, some old newspapers tie this very lab to Project MK Ultra. For those of you who don't know, MK Ultra was a very secret and very illegal CIA project where they experimented on humans. And if 11 is anything to go by, I think they wanted to create some superheroes. What's more is a woman named Terry Ives claims that she lost a daughter to the program. A missing girl, you say? Back with Joyce, she and Karen talk about everything that's going on. Meanwhile, Holly sees the lights flickering and follows them into Will's room, where she sees the same wall shenanigans Joyce did. But Karen doesn't believe that, so Joyce kicks her out. Back with Jonathan, Steve and his friends find out that he was taking pictures of them, so they rip up the photos and break his camera. I know this interaction is supposed to make me feel sorry for Jonathan, and I really want to, but that was creepy. Anyway, Nancy sees that Jonathan took a picture of Barb too. Keep that in mind for later. We then see 11 waiting for Mike and his friends, and she has another flashback of Brenner doing experiments on her. Lucky for her, Mike and the others show up and they start looking for Will. Meanwhile, Nancy heads out to look for Barb by herself, and she sees something in the woods. She now knows that something bad happened to Barb, and she doesn't know what to do about it. Meanwhile, Joyce talks to Will through the lights for a bit before realizing she needs to upgrade their communication. So she paints the alphabet on the walls and puts a light with each letter so Will can spell things out. 11 leads the boys to Will's house and says he's hiding in there. But before they can react, they see police cars and an ambulance go by and decide to follow it. Meanwhile, Will starts talking to Joyce and tells her he's right here before telling her to run. And that's when the lights go crazy and a monster tears through the wall. Thank goodness Joyce ran away. Meanwhile, the boys follow the police to a lake where they drag Will's body out of the water. No! Hopper is devastated and so are the boys. Mike loses his mind and starts screaming at 11. He calls her a liar, but before just heading off on his bike. Back with Joyce, she runs into Jonathan and just hugs her son, while Mike hugs Karen, and that's how the episode ends. So, Will isn't alive? What the hell is happening in Hawkins? Episode 4 starts with Hopper trying to convince Joyce that Will is dead, but Joyce isn't buying it for a second. She knows that her son is alive. And even though Hopper knows that's crazy, part of him wants to believe her. While Joyce and Jonathan struggle with the news of Will's death, Mike is really mad at 11 for lying to him about Will. So 11 uses her powers on the radio and Mike hears Will. He's singing a song and Mike tries to talk to him, but the connection falls through. But now Mike knows that that was Will and he is alive. The next day, Mike fakes being sick to stay at home, and after Karen leaves, he calls up Lucas and Dustin. Meanwhile, Joyce and Jonathan go to see Will's body at the morgue. Joyce just storms out after seeing it. She knows that's not her boy, and it's not just her. Hopper is hella suspicious too. We then cut to Nancy, who realizes Steve is an asshole that doesn't really give a about Barb going missing. Took you long enough, Nance. Back with Joyce, her and Jonathan get into a big argument about Will. Joyce refuses to believe he's dead, but Jonathan just wants her to accept it. Back with the boys, 11 tries to get them through to Will, but the radio isn't strong enough, so they decide to use one at the school. To do that, they dress 11 up in some nice clothes and take her to school. Meanwhile, Dr. Brenner and his agents are still studying the gate and send one of their men inside. While some police officers question Nancy about Barb, Hopper is talking to Hawkins' coroner. Apparently, he didn't get to do Will's autopsy. The state troopers handled it, and Hopper thinks that's really sus. Back with Mike, he and his friends get to the school, but they have to attend a memorial for Will before they can get to the radio. We then cut to Nancy, who's heartbroken over Barb going missing. She then looks at the photo that she took from Jonathan and realizes the monster is behind Barb in the picture. Back at Hawkins' lab, the agent that Brenner and his team sent in kind of gets sort of a little ripped to shreds. Okay, a lot of ripped to shreds by the monster. I mean, what else did they think was was gonna happen. Meanwhile, at school, Mike confronts some bullies who are laughing at Will's memorial. He pushes one of them and he's gonna punch Mike, until 11 stops him and makes him piss his pants in front of everyone. She's so cool. Meanwhile, Nancy goes to talk to Jonathan about Barb and tells him about this monster she saw. And while Nancy gives him the same description Joyce did, Jonathan knows that she's onto something. Meanwhile, Hopper tries to get some answers out of a state trooper. Turns out somebody told the trooper to stop anyone from getting close to Will's body. That's when Hopper realizes that someone is following him. This is not a normal case anymore. Back with the kids, 11 tries to connect to Will, and she does. She does it at the same time Will is talking to Joyce. He tells her he's in a dark place that looks exactly like their world, and that the monster is coming. Joyce swears she'll find him, and tells him to hide for now. The boys hear the whole thing, and now there's no doubt Will is alive. Meanwhile, Nancy and Jonathan develop some pictures Jonathan took, and they see the monster, which the kids have named the Demogorgon. Meanwhile, Hopper breaks into the morgue to check on Will's body, and realizes it's made of cotton. It's a fake. Back with Joyce, Lonnie shows up to comfort her, and Hopper, he's breaking into Hawkins' lab. The next episode starts with Hopper breaking into Hawkins' lab. He's gonna get to the bottom of this. What an absolute chat. Meanwhile, Lonnie tries talking Joyce out of thinking Will is alive, saying that it's all in her head. Shut up, Lonnie. Anyway, while Hopper goes deeper into the lab, the kids find out where Will is. In the Upside Down. It's a parallel dimension that looks exactly like ours, but instead of humans, there are monsters. That's when Hopper comes face to face with the gate of the Upside Down. But before he can do anything, he's surrounded and knocked out cold. Oh no. The next day, Jonathan comes home to find Lonnie talking to Joyce. Jonathan wants to tell Joyce what he found, but Lonnie makes him realize that she's been through enough. Anyway, after that, everyone attends Will's funeral. Meanwhile, Hopper wakes up in his home. He knows that's suspicious as hell and immediately begins taking his home apart, looking for a recording device. And what do you know? He finds one. Yeah, this is officially a government conspiracy, just like the pigeons. I know there's something about those things. They can't be real. After the funeral, Nancy and Jonathan decide to hunt the Demogorgon. While Mike and his friends ask their teacher, Mr. Clark, if a parallel dimension could exist, Mr. Clark says it can, but to get to it, you'd need a lot of energy. It'd be enough energy to create a huge electromagnetic field. Keep that in mind, that's going to be important shortly. Back with Hopper, his cops come to check on him, and Hopper says he's fine. What he actually means is he's done doing things the legal way. He's about to go rogue. Back with Mike and the others, Dustin figures something out. Everyone's compasses are pointing the wrong way. The boys then realize that they're pointing towards something with a strong electromagnetic force. They're talking about the gate to the Upside Down. All they have to do is follow the compasses. We then cut to Nancy, who gets a visit from Steve. Steve apologizes for being a dick, and Nancy accepts it. But she can't hang with him right now. She has stuff to do. Meanwhile, Joyce finds out that Lonnie was just there so he could sue the government for money, and she kicks him out. Screw you, Lonnie, and by the way, what the hell kind of a name is Lonnie? Anyway, while Nancy and Jonathan do some target practice, Hopper calls his ex-wife one last time before he heads out to raise some hell. Meanwhile, Mike and his friends follow the compasses north, looking for the gate to the Upside Down. And from the looks of it, 11 does not want them to do that. Meanwhile, Jonathan and Nancy get into a fight over some stupid You know, teenagers are the worst. Back with Joyce. Hopper comes to visit her, but he has to check out the place for a wire first. After he's done checking, he tells Joyce that she was right. Will's body is a fake. Meanwhile, the boys realize that 11 has been messing with their compasses, and Lucas loses it. He screams at 11, which turns into a fight between him and Mike. 11 panics and sends Lucas flying, knocking him out cold. Why did you do that, 11? This makes 11 have another flashback of the experiments she was a part of, back when she first learned about the Upside Down. Anyway, Lucas wakes up and just walks off. That's when Mike and Dustin realize that 11 is missing. Meanwhile, Nancy and Jonathan are looking through the woods when they see an injured deer, but before they can do anything about it, it gets dragged away. They follow it and get split up. Nancy sees a trail of blood and follows it to a tree, so she goes inside the tree and gets to the Upside Down. Before she can process anything though, she sees it, the Demogorgon. She tries to get away, but the Demogorgon hears her and begins chasing her. She screams and runs away, which makes Jonathan look for her, but he misses the small entrance in the tree that Nancy crawled into. And worse, the entrance starts closing up. Oh boy. Episode 6 starts with Nancy running away from the Demogorgon, screaming for Jonathan. Jonathan hears her and starts screaming back. Eventually, she finds her way back to the entrance, and Jonathan pulls her out before it closes. They just hug as the entrance closes. Later, Steve goes to Nancy's house to talk to her, only to see Jonathan there. It's not what you think, buddy. Anyway, while Joyce and Hopper try to put together a mystery, Jonathan stays over at Nancy's to give her some comfort. The next morning, Mike is crashing out over 11's betrayal, while Nancy and Jonathan decide they're gonna lure the Demogorgon out. Oh yeah, that's gonna end really well. Meanwhile, the same lady that killed Benny visits Mr. Clark, only this time she's posing as some tech lady so that she can get close to the boys. Speaking of the boys, Dustin convinces Mike to apologize to Lucas, so they head over to Lucas's house. Meanwhile, 11 wakes up in the forest and, fueled by more flashbacks, she decides to get something to eat. Meanwhile, Lucas says he will only accept Mike's apology if he gives up on 11. This leads to another fight, and Lucas heads out to look for Will himself. Meanwhile, 11 just straight up steals food from a supermarket, and then we cut to Joyce and Hopper. They have realized that there was a kid at Hawkins that escaped, aka 11, and they decide to go to the kid's alleged mother, Terry Ives. Unfortunately, it looks like Terry is in no shape to answer any questions. It looks like she's lost her mind. Anyway, while Lucas goes to look for the gate, Mike and Dustin head off to look for 11. Meanwhile, Joyce and Hopper talk to Terry's sister, Becky. Apparently, she was a part of MK Ultra when she was pregnant and lost her baby in the 3rd trimester, but Terry always said that her daughter was alive. Not only that, but Terry said her daughter had telekinetic powers too. Oh yeah, she's definitely talking about 11. Back with Nancy, she and Jonathan start collecting supplies to catch the Demogorgon. Unfortunately, that's when she realizes Steve has written some colorful words about her. Nancy confronts Steve, who thinks she was cheating on him, and this leads to a fight between Jonathan and Steve, and Jonathan beats his ass. It gets so bad that the police show up and arrest Jonathan. Steve honestly deserved that. Back with Joyce and Hopper, they decide that Terry is a dead end. Still, Hopper tells Joyce not to give up, that they will find Will. That's when Hopper gets a call about Jonathan being under arrest, so they head to the police station. Meanwhile, Lucas makes his way to Hawkins' lab, while Mike and Dustin look for 11. Unfortunately, they run into their bullies, and they start chasing Mike and Dustin. They eventually catch up, and one of them takes Dustin hostage. He tells Mike to jump off a cliff if he wants Dustin to live. Jeez, what kind of kid does that? Mike, with no other choice, jumps off, only to be levitated back to safety. That's right, 11 is here, and she knocks down one of the bullies and breaks the other's arm, making them run like cowards. But immediately after that, she passes out. Uh-oh. That's when 11 flashes back to the very first time she saw the Demogorgon and made contact with it. 11 wakes up and tells Mike the truth. She's the one who opened the gate to the Upside Down. Brenner made her do it, and she regrets it big time. She thinks she's a monster, but Mike tells her it's okay. After all, she saved his life, and she's a hero. Mike and Dustin then take her home, but Brenner's agents finally find them, and they immediately send out a bunch of armed agents to get 11 back. Okay, this is not looking good. The next episode starts with Mike, Dustin, and 11 getting some bad news from Lucas. The bad men are coming after 11. They immediately leave the house and link up with Lucas, but immediately get surrounded by Brenner and his group of mouth breathers. Agents. So 11 straight up flips a car with her powers, one of the most iconic scenes from the show. The friends get to safety, and they all make up with each other, and the gang is back. We then cut to Joyce and Hopper, who find Jonathan and Nancy at the police station. They talk and realize they're all on the same page. Will is alive, and they need to find the Demogorgon. Meanwhile, Dr. Brenner and the CIA show up at Mike's home and tell his parents about 11. They then ask him where Mike might have gone, pretending that they're looking out for him. You know what? Screw you, Brenner. While the kids try to figure out how to get into Hawkins' lab, Steve gets in a fight with his friends and heads over to clean up the disgusting message they wrote about Nancy. Meanwhile, Hopper and the grown-ups contact Mike on the radio, and Mike responds. Finally, after a whole season of separate missions, everyone is finally united. Hopper goes to get the kids, who are hiding in an abandoned bus, and saves them from some agents. He then takes them to Byers household, where they come up with a plan. 11 says she can find Will and Barb, but she needs a sensory deprivation tank for that. It's basically a body of water that removes all other senses and makes you hyper-focus. After asking Mr. Clark how to build one, they work together and build one using a pool in the high school's gym. With the process done, 11 steps inside the pool and it begins. Now in the Upside Down, 11 first looks for Barb and confirms that she is dead. She then looks for Will and finds him hiding inside of his makeshift fort called Castle Byers. With this info, Hopper and Joyce head to Hawkins' lab, hoping to get inside the Upside Down and get Will. But Nancy and Jonathan can't just sit back. They want to kill the Demogorgon, so they go and get their supplies and head out. Meanwhile, Joyce and Hopper try breaking into Hawkins' lab, but they get caught immediately. And the episode ends with the Demogorgon finding Will. Oh no. This ain't good, guys. This ain't looking good at all. In the final episode of season 1, it kicks off with Brenner interrogating Joyce, who tells him to rot in hell. You tell him, Joyce. Meanwhile, Hopper is being tortured, but he knows he has all the leverage. If they kill him, everything he knows about Hawkins' lab will be published in the New York Times by a friend of his. So he and Brenner make a deal. Hopper gives him 11, and he'll let Joyce and Hopper use the gate to find Will. While Jonathan and Nancy go to the Byers house and set up a trap for the Demogorgon, Hopper and Joyce put on protective suits and enter the Upside Down. While Joyce and Hopper look for Will, the kids are still at the high school waiting for whatever comes next. Meanwhile, Jonathan and Nancy set the trap and use their blood to lure out the Demogorgon. That's when Steven shows up. He wants to apologize to Nancy, but he picked the worst possible time ever because that's when the Demogorgon shows up. They shoot at the monster and try and lure it into the trap, but it disappears. Nancy tells Steve to leave, but Steve decides not to, and that turns out to be a good thing because he saves Nancy and Jonathan's lives by beating the Demogorgon with a baseball bat, like an absolute badass. They lure the Demogorgon into the trap and set it on fire. When they put the fire out, they're certain the Demogorgon is dead, only to realize that it's escaped. Meanwhile, Joyce and Hopper make it to the Byers house in the Upside Down and see that the Demogorgon was injured, so they follow its trail. Meanwhile, Mike tells Eleven that he likes her and gives her a kiss. Aww. He then sees lights outside and thinks it's Nancy, but it's Brenner and his men. The kids try to run and Eleven kills a bunch of them, but passes out from using her powers too much. More agents then show up and grab the boys while Brenner grabs Eleven. They're about to take Eleven away when the lights start flickering. You see, all the blood from the dead agents has lured it. The Demogorgon is here. In the confusion, the boys grab Eleven and make a run for it, and Brenner, he gets eaten alive by the Demogorgon. While that's going on, Hopper and Joyce make their way into the Upside Down version of the high school, and they see the Demogorgon has victims trapped in some disgusting monster goo. And there, they find Will. They pull him out of it, and he's not breathing though. Don't do this to me. You can't do this to me, guys. Back with the boys, they hide in a room, hoping the Demogorgon will just go away. This turns out to be a bad plan because the Demogorgon finds them. Lucas tries stopping it with rocks. Great plan, buddy. That's when the Demogorgon flies and slams into the wall. It's Eleven. She says goodbye to Mike and uses all her power to rip the Demogorgon to shreds before disappearing. Not again! Meanwhile, Hopper and Joyce do CPR on Will, and it works. He's back! Sometime later, Will wakes up in the hospital, and we have a heartwarming family reunion. After that, his friends come in, and it's another happy reunion. Meanwhile, Hopper steps outside and is taken away by some agents in a government car. A month later, the boys are back to playing D&D, this time on Christmas. After the campaign ends, they all go home happy except for Mike. He still misses Eleven. Damn. Other than that, it's all good vibes. Nancy gifts Jonathan a camera, though it seems like she's still with Steve. Meanwhile, Hopper takes some food from his Christmas party and leaves it in a container in the woods. Back at the Byers household, everything is back to perfect, except it isn't. Will goes to the bathroom and spits out some Demogorgon goo before he sees the bathroom in the Upside Down form. Still, he goes back to the table pretending everything's okay, but we know it's not because we have 3 more seasons to get through. Season 2 kicks off with a robbery? A group of bandits rob a bank, and they're on the run from some cops. It looks like they're cooked until one of them makes the cops crash into each other. How did she do that? Well, we then see a tattoo on her arm that says 008. Looks like there are more psychics out there than we thought. We then cut to the boys, who are all headed to the arcade. There, they find out that someone has destroyed all of their high scores. Someone called Mad Max. That's when Will gets another vision of the Upside Down and sees a bunch of clouds. A storm is coming, but Mike snaps him back to reality, and they go back to the arcade. The next day, Hopper is visited at the police station by Murray Bowman. Murray is, well, a conspiracy theorist, if you will. He's heard all of the things about Eleven going around Hawkins and has decided that she is a Russian spy. It's a great theory, Murray. Hopper just denies everything, making fun of him, and he heads out on a case. Meanwhile, Nancy is helping Steve with his college application, but it's not looking too great. Hey, at least they are still together. That's when we get our first looks at the new kids in school, Max Mayfield and Billy Hargrove. Max is a nerdy but cool teenage girl, while Billy is like Steve in season 1, but if he was a complete asshole and degenerate. They will be important very soon. Anyway, it turns out that Max is in Mike and his friend's class. They put 2 and 2 together and realize that she's the Mad Max that beat their high scores. Meanwhile, we see that Joyce has started dating a guy named Samwise Gamgee. I mean, Bob Newby. Bob is a super sweet guy, and they clearly like each other. Oh, and and he works at Radio Shack. This will be very important later. Meanwhile, Hopper goes to investigate some sabotaged pumpkins. Yeah, you heard that right, and something is off about them. Meanwhile, Nancy tries to get Jonathan to socialize more, but it doesn't look like it's working. He's just a loner. Back with the boys, they kind of sort of start stalking Max. But fun time is over, because Will has to go in for a checkup at Hawkins' lab. He gets questioned by Dr. Sam Owens, and he tells Sam about all his visions. Afterwards, Sam tells Joyce and Hopper that Will is just suffering from PTSD. Sam wants them to trust him, but Joyce and Hopper know better, and it looks like their suspicion is valid because Hawkins' lab is still experimenting with the gate. Only this time, it looks like they're trying to burn it. Anyway, while Dustin and Lucas spy on Max like some deranged stalkers, Nancy and Steve visit Barb's parents. There, Barb's parents tell them that they've hired Murray Bowman to investigate Barb's disappearance, and they think he's gonna find Barb. This breaks Nancy's heart. The guilt catches up with her, and she goes to the bathroom and cries. Meanwhile, Mike tries to contact Eleven on the radio, and he's tried every day since she disappeared, but there's still no response. Meanwhile, Dustin gets home, but there's something in his trash can. Back at the Byer household, Will is kinda messed up. Everyone treats him like he's a freak, and it bothers him. But Jonathan cheers him up, saying all the coolest people in the world are freaks. Amen, brother. We get a quick cut of an emergency alarm at Hawkins' lab before Will gets another vision of the storm, but this time he sees a giant monster in it. Well, that's not good. Meanwhile, Hopper goes home, and we see that he's living with someone, and that someone is Eleven. She's alive and well, and she's even growing her hair out, but her friends have no idea. The next episode shows us what happened to Eleven after season 1. She woke up in the Upside Down and immediately started looking for Mike. She found a gate back to the real world and tried to go to Mike's home, but after seeing it was surrounded by cops, she decided to hide in the woods. We then cut back to the present. It's Halloween day, and Eleven wants to go trick-or-treating, but Hopper says no, it's too risky. He'll just bring a bunch of candy home by 5:15 p.m. instead. It's not much of a Halloween, but I understand. Meanwhile, the boys all dress up as the Ghostbusters and go to school in costume, only to see that they're the only ones in costumes. It's kinda awkward, but you guys do you. Own it. Meanwhile, Joyce talks to Hopper about Will. She found a drawing of a monster he made, and she's really upset. She just wants this to be over. Oh, and the assholes at Hawkins' lab are still experimenting with the Upside Down. Meanwhile, Nancy is being destroyed by guilt. She wants to tell Barb's parents the truth, but Steve says they can't. The CIA will literally destroy their lives. And I hate to say it, but Steve's got a point. Later, Mike and Dustin gather up the courage to talk to Max. They want her to be a part of their group. Max doesn't say yes, but she doesn't say no either. I'll take that as a win for these nerds. While Eleven has more flashbacks of surviving out in the forest, Hopper gets another complaint about pumpkins, but this time it's serious. Every single pumpkin field in Hawkins has been ruined. We then see Max riding home with Billy, and he's a complete psychopath. He's manipulative, abusive, he even tries to run over Mike and the boys. I hate him. I hate this guy. Meanwhile, Hopper investigates the pumpkin fields and realizes they've all been contaminated with something that reminds him a lot of the Upside Down. Back with Will, Jonathan is supposed to take him trick-or-treating, but Jonathan lets Will just go on his own. He's gonna go to a party that Nancy's gonna be at. Hey, look at that, he's socializing. We then cut to the party where Billy's having a great time and everyone there loves him. Everyone except for Steve and Nancy. Steve is worried about Nancy, but she just wants to get drunk and forget about her guilt. Great coping mechanism, dude. While Joyce and Bob romance it up, the boys are out trick-or-treating, and Max joins them. Lucas and Dustin love this, but Mike not so much. Meanwhile, Hopper gets too caught up with the pumpkins and is late to get home to 11. Poor girl. Meanwhile, the gang is still trick-or-treating when Will gets called a freak by some other kids, and he falls over and immediately has another vision of the Upside Down. He runs away from the huge monster, and his friends find him totally freaked out. Mike decides to take Will back home, and he wasn't having any fun with Max anyway. Meanwhile, Jonathan goes to the party, and he actually starts talking to a girl. Unfortunately, that's when Steve and Nancy get into a huge fight, and Nancy basically tells Steve she doesn't love him, and Steve runs off, leaving Nancy. While that drama is going down, Will explains his episodes to Mike, and Mike tells him how much he misses Eleven. Trauma bonding really makes the best friends. Anyway, Jonathan drops a super drunk Nancy off at home, while Hopper gets home with some candy. Unfortunately, Eleven is mad at him, so he just sits by himself eating candy. Meanwhile, Eleven tries to contact Mike, but she can't. She just starts crying. Really, this poor girl. Back with Dustin, he finally notices something wrong with his trash can, and the episode ends with him looking inside. What is in there? And now this next episode starts with our favorite game. What's in Dustin's trash can? It's a little slimy creature. I would have never guessed that. And Dustin decides to keep it as a pet. He names it D'Artagnan, after the Three Musketeer, but we're just gonna call him Dart. Anyway, Dustin goes to sleep happy, but I'm not an idiot, and that thing is clearly from the Upside Down. The next day, Eleven gets into a fight fight with Hopper. She wants to see Mike, but he says it's too dangerous. Anyway, while Dustin gets some biology books to uncover what kind of animal Dart is, Bob is dropping Will off at school. He then gives Will a tip on how to get rid of his nightmares, by facing them head on. Interesting. Later, Dustin gets to class late and asks all his friends to meet him after school. He has a big announcement. Meanwhile, Hopper analyzes the pumpkin patterns and realizes they make a pattern, and it all leads to Hawkins' lab. We then cut to 11, and we see flashbacks of her moving in with Hopper, but 11 is sick and tired of being a prisoner, so she decides to leave. Uh-oh. We then cut to Steve, who's getting cooked at basketball by Billy. That's when Nancy comes to talk to him. Nancy doesn't remember the things she said, but Steve does, and he's done with Nancy. Ouch. Meanwhile, Dustin shows Dart to his friends, and he thinks he's found a new species of animal. Deep down, Will knows that Dart is from the Upside Down, but he doesn't say anything. Poor kid. Anyway, after some Joyce-Bob bonding, we see Hopper talking to Dr. Sam. Hopper knows that Sam's experiments are causing the pumpkin plague, and he wants answers. Sam is hesitant, but Hopper reminds him of their deal. Hopper keeps the town away from the lab, and Sam keeps his out of Hawkins. Meanwhile, Nancy and Jonathan talk about their problems, and they both feel helpless until Nancy has an idea. Back with 11, she asks a nice lady where the school is. She's gonna go find Mike. Meanwhile, Joyce watches the video Will was making on Halloween and discovers something terrible. In the video, just for a split second, she sees a monster, and it's the same one that Will's been drawing. Speaking of Will, he tells Mike that Dart is from the Upside Down, so Mike stops Dustin from showing it to Mr. Clark. They try to figure out what to do with it. Dustin wants to keep it, but Lucas wants to take it to Hopper. In the confusion, Dart grows legs, and Max accidentally lets him escape. Meanwhile, Nancy calls Barb's mom and says that she needs to tell her something, but it has to be in person. And of course, the CIA are listening in. Back with Hopper, he's having Dr. Sam look at these pumpkins, and he gets a report about 11 being outside. He gets in his truck and he rushes to go get her. Speaking of 11, she's made it to the high school, and she's looking for Mike. At the same time, Mike and his friends are looking for Dart. That's when Max confronts Mike about not liking her. She's really making an effort to be his friend. Unfortunately, 11 sees this and gets the wrong idea. She gets really jealous and makes Max fall off her skateboard before running away. Meanwhile, Will finds Dart in the bathroom when he has another vision of the Upside Down and the monster. This time, Will takes Bob's advice and faces the monster, only to get possessed by it. Thanks, Bob. Episode 4 starts with Joyce coming to school looking for Will. Mike and the others are doing the same, and they find Will in the field having another episode. In reality, the monster is taking over Will's body until he wakes up. Joyce takes Will home and asks him about the monster, so Will tells her everything, and she promises to protect him no matter what. Meanwhile, 11 gets home and has a serious shouting match with Hopper. Hopper grounds her, so she makes all of the windows in the house explode. Sheesh, and I thought I was a dramatic teenager. Anyway, the next day, Joyce takes Will's temperature, but he doesn't have a fever. In fact, it's the opposite. He's cold. So Joyce decides to run him a hot bath. We then cut to Dustin. Turns out he found Dart, but he's hiding him at home from all of his friends. Sure enough, when Dustin gets to school, he sees his friends are still looking for Will. Meanwhile, it looks like the monster is taking over Will's body. He wants everything to be cold, because that's how the monster likes it. Again, thanks, Bob. We then cut to Hopper, who tells 11 he'll unground her if she cleans up the house. We get a quick cut of Billy straight up bullying Steve, physically and mentally, before we see Nancy and Jonathan. They're out of town, so they can talk to Barb's mom, but get chased down by CIA agents. Uh-oh. Meanwhile, Hopper goes to the Byers house, where he asks Will what's happening with him. Will says he's been seeing things, and he can't explain them with words, so he draws it out instead. Meanwhile, the boys know something is wrong with Will, so they come up with a plan. Mike is going to see Will after school, while Lucas and Dustin look for Dart. He's connected to this somehow. Oh, and Max isn't allowed in this meeting. I understand, but it still sucks. Meanwhile, 11 starts cleaning the house until she finds Hopper's files on Hawkins' lab. Oh boy. Speaking of Hawkins' lab, Nancy and Jonathan get a personal tour from Sam. He explains that they're trying to get rid of the gate, which they actually are, but they haven't done it yet. And if Nancy and Jonathan tell people about it, the word might get out and it could turn into a whole serious problem, especially if the Russians find out. Let's keep a pin on that one. Meanwhile, Joyce and Hopper piece together Will's drawings and realize what's happening. The monster is spreading its roots throughout Hawkins. Back at school, Max gets mad at Lucas. She's sick and tired of being left out and decides she's done with the group. She gets in the car with Billy, who tells her to stay away from Lucas. Turns out not only is he an asshole, he is a racist asshole. Meanwhile, 11 goes through Hopper's files and finds out about her mom, Terry Ives. This is important because, well, Hopper kinda sorta told her that Terry was dead, so 11 tries to communicate with Terry, and she does for a couple of seconds before Terry vanishes, and 11 turns into a crying mess. She's been through so much, why would Hopper lie about this? Like, seriously. While Mike goes to check in on Will, Nancy and Jonathan leaves Hawkins' lab, but it turns out that this was their plan all along, because Nancy recorded her conversation with Sam, and he's gonna expose it. Oh boy. Meanwhile, Dustin gets home to find that Dart has broken out of his cage. Not only that, it's eating his cat. Why? Well, Dustin finds out when Dart turns around, Dart is actually a baby Demogorgon. Holy. The episode starts with Joyce taping Will's drawings all over the house as Will explains his visions to Mike. Meanwhile, Hopper tries digging into the pumpkin fields and he finds himself in a series of large tunnels that are very upside down coded. But it turns out these aren't tunnels at all. They're the monster's roots. He gets sprayed by some upside down thingy and he passes out as the hole he came in closes up. While Nancy and Jonathan stay in a hotel overnight, Will sees Hopper in his dream and realizes he's in trouble. Speaking of Hopper, he wakes up and realizes he's screwed. So he starts looking for a way out, dropping cigarettes to track his path, but something is following him. Anyway, while Lucas tries to make it up to Max, Dustin distracts his mom before planning a trap to capture Dart. It isn't easy, but he manages to pull it off. You go, Dust. Meanwhile, 11 is on another adventure, but this time she's visiting Terry Ives, aka her mother. While 11 tries reconnecting with her mother, Jonathan and Nancy go to visit the one, the only, Murray Bowman. Murray has been theorizing about supernatural activities in Hawkins for some time now, and these two are about to give him the mother of all scoops. Meanwhile, Lucas decides to tell Max the truth about everything, and Bob helps Joyce decode Will's drawings to find Hopper. Bob then realizes what the drawings are. It's a map of Hawkins. Back with Hopper, he realizes that whatever the tunnel is made of hates fire. He uses it to start clawing his way out, while Dustin tries to get his friends to help him with Dart. 11 realizes her mom has completely lost her mind, and she can't be fixed. Still, Becky shows 11 around home and says 11 can live with them if she really wants to. And that's when the lights start flickering and 11 realizes what's happening. Terry knows she's here and she wants to talk. While Bob, Joyce, Will, and Mike figure out where Hopper is trapped, Dustin can't find any of his friends, so he recruits Steve instead. Back with Hopper, he gets trapped by some slimy roots and the poor bastard just screams, "Hurry up, guys!" Meanwhile, Lucas finishes telling Max everything and she doesn't believe him at first, but seeing how serious he is, she starts to buy it. She has to go, but this conversation is far from over. While that's happening, Nancy and Jonathan finish telling Murray everything, but it's not that simple. Murray believes them, sure, but they need the public to believe their batch crazy story. And there's only one way to do that, to water it down and make it more believable. Some people would call that lying, but I don't care. While Sam and the scientists at Hawkins' lab realize they screwed up big time, 11 uses her powers to go inside Terry's mind. There, she sees Terry's memories. After 11 was born, the doctors took her and claimed she died at birth. But Terry knew she was alive and tried to rescue her, but was stopped. And Brenner turned her mind to goo to stop her from ever coming back. That man was literally the devil. Meanwhile, Joyce and the others follow Will's map to find Hopper's truck. So Joyce and Bob dig a hole, go inside, and rescue Hopper. The three of them are helped out by agents from Hawkins' lab who start torching the roots from the inside, but it turns out that that's a bad thing because doing that hurts Will as well. Episode 6 starts with Will and Hopper getting taken to Hawkins' lab to be treated. Meanwhile, Dustin tells Steve about Dart. So Steve tries to kill him, only to realize Dart grows bigger and has escaped. While Joyce demands some accountability from Sam at Hawkins' lab, Murray does what we all wanted to do. He tells Nancy and Jonathan to just get together. The two try to deny it, but end up making out and spending the night together at Murray's place. Meanwhile, Lucas finally contacts Dustin, who tells Lucas they have to look for Dart. Meanwhile, Sam shows a freshly recovered Hopper something. And by something, I mean he shows him just how deep the monster has spread its roots throughout Hawkins. Later, while Will is recovering, Joyce gives Bob the tea, and he's just like, yeah, let's roll with it. I think I like Bob now. Anyway, while Nancy and Jonathan are headed back to Hawkins, Lucas decides to take Max Demogorgon hunting. Boy howdy, I sure hope nothing bad happens. Back with Will, he's awake, but there's a problem. He's losing his memories, and the scientists then try torching a piece of the root they cut off, and realize that hurts Will when they start to do that. Sam tells Joyce that Will has been infected with some sort of hive mind virus, but that they can fix him. Sure you can. Anyway, we then cut to Dustin and Steve hunting for Dart, and wouldn't you know it, they're getting along wrong. Steve gives Dustin some girl advice and even tells Dustin what shampoo he uses to make his hair look so fabulous. Meanwhile, Hopper tries contacting Eleven at home and apologizes for everything, but she's not there to hear it. Back at the lab, the other doctors don't care if burning the roots hurt Will, they just want to start now. That's when Will realizes something. He tells Mike that he knows where the monster is hiding. While Dustin, Steve, Lucas, and Max meet up to set a trap for Dart, Nancy and Jonathan go to Jonathan's home, only to find it covered in drawings, and they know something seriously wrong is happening. Anyway, while the agents travel to where Will says the monster is hiding, Dustin and the others finish their trap. Later, Lucas and Max talk, and they share a nice bonding moment where Max trauma dumps about her divorced parents and how Billy is actually her stepbrother, and yada yada yada. Their wholesome bonding moment is cut short when Dart shows up, but he isn't going for the bait. So Steve heads out to act as bait, only to realize there's not just one baby Demogorgon, there's a bunch of them. Steve fights some of them and gets back into hiding, but they're completely surrounded. It looks like they're toast until the Demogorgons just run off, almost like they're going somewhere. You see, the monster isn't hiding where Will told the agents. Turns out the monster made Will say that and is actually a trap for the agents. The baby Demogorgons show up and kill the agents. That's when Will tells his mom she should leave. They're almost there, and by they, I mean more monsters. Oh boy. The next episode starts with Eleven realizing what Terry was trying to tell her. You see, when Terry tried rescuing Eleven, there was another girl with her, and Terry wants Eleven to find her. It takes her a while, but Eleven manages to find out where she is. But as she goes to tell Becky, she realizes Becky is contacting Hopper. So Eleven just grabs some money and goes to find her lost sister. Her adventure takes her to the shady part of Illinois, where she runs into a group of even shadier looking people. One of them tries to hurt her, but she starts seeing spiders on his arm and freaks out. That's when Eleven's sister shows up, Callie, and she's the same girl from the first scene of this season. Callie talks to Eleven, and she has powers too, but instead of moving stuff like Eleven, she can show people illusions. Callie tells Eleven that she belongs with her, as sisters. The next day, she introduces Eleven to the crew. There's the crackhead co-ed Axel, the new girl Dottie, the calm and cool Mick, and the strong but sweet Funshine. Callie recruited them all, and their mission is simple: hunt down the people who hurt them, and Eleven is 100% on board. This seems like a bad idea. Callie then helps Eleven channel her anger so she can unlock the true potential of her power. After that, Eleven helps them track Ray, one of the men who hurt Terry. After robbing a store, they head over to Ray's home. After torturing him for a bit, Ray says something crazy: that Brenner is alive. Callie doesn't believe him and tells Eleven to kill him. Eleven is about to until she sees a picture of his kids. Speaking of kids, they called the cops, and the cops are there now. So Eleven decides to spare Ray and even stops Callie from killing him. This makes Callie super mad. She even tells Eleven to never stop her from taking revenge ever again. Back at their hideout, Callie tries to convince Eleven that what they're doing isn't wrong. She even uses a vision of Brenner to convince her. Callie says Eleven can go back at any point in time she wants, or she can stay with her sister and get revenge. Later, Eleven checks in on Hopper and Mike and realizes they're in deep. And that's when the cops track the gang down and break into their hideout. Callie uses her illusions to help them escape, but Eleven refuses to go with them. Callie says going back is useless. No one is going to save Eleven. But Eleven knows that. She's going back to save them. With that, Callie and the gang drive off, and Eleven gets on a bus back to Hawkins. She's coming home, where she belongs. Episode 8 takes us back to Hawkins' lab, and the mini Demogorgons are attacking. Hopper and Sam make their way back to Will and the others, and the agents helplessly try to kill the monsters. Speaking of Will, Mike says that they need to knock him out because whatever is controlling the Demogorgons is using Will as a spy. Joyce puts Will to sleep with an injection just as Sam and Hopper burst in. They then grab Will and look for an exit, but it's useless. The power goes out and they're all trapped. Meanwhile, Billy's dad and Max's mom, who are married now, come home to find Max missing, so Billy's dad smacks the out of him, insults him, and tells him to go look for Max. I'm pretty sure abuse just breeds more abuse, doesn't it? Anywho, meanwhile, Steve, Dustin, Lucas, and Max follow the Demogorgon's trail and realize they went to Hawkins' lab. So that's where they're gonna go too. Back at the lab, Sam tells them how they can escape, but it involves nerdy stuff that only Bob can do. So he hugs Joyce, grabs a gun, and sets off to turn the power back on. Back outside, Nancy and Jonathan show up to the lab and run into Steve and the others. And they all hear the Demogorgons screaming. Back inside, Bob manages to get to the power room and he turns the power back on. Okay, I love Bob. With the power back on, Bob opens the doors, clearing an exit path. Sam stays behind in the surveillance room, saying he'll help them navigate their way out. Damn, so Sam was a Chad after all. So with Sam's instructions, Joyce, Mike, Hopper, and the unconscious Will make it outside. After that, Sam helps Bob make his way out, and it's going well, and Bob looks like he's home free, until he drops a broom and alerts the Demogorgons. He tries his best, but he can't escape them, and Joyce has to watch in horror as Bob gets eaten alive in front of her. Hopper pulls her away, and that's when Nancy and Jonathan show up to drive them to safety. Half the crew gets in Jonathan's car, and the other half gets in Hopper's car, and they go back to the Byer household. There, they finally come up with a name for the monster controlling everything, the Mind Flayer. They realize that the only way to beat it is with Will's help, but since Will is being used as a spy, they need to get creative. So they create an interrogation room in the backyard shed with super bright lights, so the Mind Flayer can't figure out where it is. They then wake Will up and try talking to him. Joyce, Jonathan, and Mike all tell Will how much he means to them through old memories they just made with him. But Will just tells them to let go. They think Will has been completely lost to the Mind Flayer until Hopper notices Will tapping on the chair. Turns out Will is inside there, but he can't speak, so he's using Morse code to communicate. So Will's loved ones start talking to him, and he manages to deliver a message to them. Close gate. Well, thanks, Captain Obvious, but how the hell will they do that? Unfortunately, that's when the phone rings, and the Mind Flayer knows exactly where it is. It summons the Demogorgons, and the whole crew gets ready to fight them off, until a dead Demogorgon flies through the window. That's when the front door opens, and there she is. 11. She's back, and she's been reunited with Mike, and everyone else, but mostly Mike. The last episode of Season 2 starts with Mike and 11 hugging. Hopper then tells everyone that he was the one hiding 11, and Mike gets super mad at him. Anyway, 11 meets everyone except Max, who she hates because she thought Mike lied to her. And Joyce takes her to Will. There, Joyce asks if 11 can close the gate. After all, she was the one who opened it. But even if she can, it won't be easy because the gate is surrounded by Demogorgons. We then cut to Karen, who is then visited by Billy? Turns out he needs direction to Will's home, and Nancy gives them to him. Oh, and he totally hits on Karen, and she doesn't hate it. Keep that in mind for Season 3, why don't you? Anyway, back at the Byer house, the plan is simple. Close the gate, which will stop the Mind Flayer and kill everything it's controlling, until they realizes that'll kill Will too. So they make two teams. Team A, Joyce, Jonathan, and Nancy, and they're gonna take Will somewhere far away and warm him up enough to get rid of the Mind Flayer. It hates fire, remember? Meanwhile, Team B, Hopper and 11 will go close the gate. Everyone else stays home. Got it? Good. Anyway, on their way to Hawkins' lab, 11 and Hopper both apologize to each other and make up. Meanwhile, back at home, Mike comes up with a plan to get the Demogorgons away from the lab to help Hopper and 11 by burning the roots. Steve says no, but he has bigger problems. Billy just pulled up out front and he's looking for Max. Unfortunately, Billy sees Max inside, so he just pushes Steve over and barges in. He decides to pin the blame on Lucas, that stupid racist bastard, and is about to beat him up until Steve jumps in and he starts fighting Billy. He gets the shit beaten out of him. In fact, Billy would have probably killed him if not for Max hitting him with a sleep injection. Billy passes out, Max asserts dominance, and the kids head out and execute Mike's plan. They're gonna burn the roots. Meanwhile, Joyce, Jonathan, and Nancy make it to Hopper's place. There, they tie Will up and turn up the heat. Back with the kids, Max drives everyone, including Steve, to get inside the roots. Steve thinks it's a terrible idea, but decides to help out anyway. What a G. Back with Hopper, he and 11 make it to Hawkins' lab. There, they find an injured but alive Sam. Hopper stops his bleeding, gives him a gun, and heads towards the gate. 11 follows him. Back with Steve and the kids, they find the hub area of the roots, and they start drenching it with oil and gas. Meanwhile, Will, more accurately, the Mind Flayer inside of Will, is screaming in pain from all of the heat. Jonathan wants to let him go, but that's when Will gets a hand free and grabs Joyce's throat. Meanwhile, Hopper and 11 make it to the gate and get ready to deal with the Demogorgons. But they don't have to, because the second Steve lights the hub on fire, everything kind of just works out. The Mind Flayer escapes Will's body, and the Demogorgons run to the fire, giving 11 and Hopper a free shot at closing the gate. Unfortunately, before she can close it, we see a huge shadow on the other side of the gate. The Mind Flayer is here. Meanwhile, Steve and the others run into a Demogorgon, but Dustin recognizes it as Dart, so Dustin uses chocolate to try and convince Dart to let them go, and somehow, by some miracle, it actually works. Back with 11, she starts closing the gate. The Mind Flayer summons all the Demogorgons to get her, and so Hopper shoots them to protect her. With the gate closing, the Mind Flayer tries to possess 11, but she's built different, and she pushes the Mind Flayer back and closes the gate. All the Demogorgons just kind of drop dead, including Dart, and it's finally over. A month later, everything is different. Hawkins' lab closes thanks to the story Murray Bowman woman leaks. What a legend. Meanwhile, Hopper becomes a legal guardian of 11, who gets to keep the name Terry gave her. Jane Hopper, to be exact. Meanwhile, Mike and his friends all get ready for the prom. Looks like life is back to normal again. Well, as normal can be in Hawkins. At prom, the friends all meet up, except for 11. Damn. Lucas and Max start dancing, and Will somehow manages to get a dance too. Dustin gets rejected by everyone, so Nancy dances with him and cheers him up, saying girls will be all over him when he grows up. You know, I believe her. Meanwhile, Joyce and Hopper share a cigarette outside, and Hopper comforts Joyce. She's still mourning Bob. Rest in peace, Bob. You were a true hero. Anyway, Mike is super depressed, until 11 walks in. They start dancing, and in that moment, everything is okay in Hawkins. Mike and his friends are finally happy, and they better cherish that happiness because the Mind Flayer is far from done. Season 3 kicks off in communist Russia, where some Russian scientists are trying to open a gate to the Upside Down. Why do people keep doing that? Their experiment starts off okay, but the machine malfunctions, and they fail to open the gate, and a bunch of scientists get fried up like some Kentucky Fried Chicken. The scientist in charge says he's close, but the Russian general overseeing the project doesn't want to be close. So he has the head scientist killed and gives the other scientist a year to open the gate. Jeez, and I thought I had high-risk deadlines. A year later, we go to Hawkins, where Mike and 11 are smooching it up. Hopper isn't a big fan of this, of course, but he can't stop him. Mike then heads off to the brand new Starcourt Mall that just opened up. He's with Lucas, Will, and Max. Dustin is at Nerd Summer Camp or something like that. Anyway, they meet Steve, who's working at an ice cream store, with Robin Buckley, a sassy and smart girl about the same age as him. Anyway, Steve sneaks the gang into a movie, and that's when the power goes out. Not just at the mall either. All of Hawkins loses power, and that's because the Mind Flayer is back, and it's up to some evil. Will realizes something is wrong, but when the power comes back on, he just ignores it. Anyway, we then see that Nancy and Jonathan are a proper couple now, and are both working for a newspaper. Meanwhile, Dustin comes home, and his friends give him a surprise, which Dustin does not take well. We then cut to the swimming pool, and Billy is a lifeguard. All the neighborhood moms are straight thirsting over him, including Karen Wheeler. That's weird and disgusting, but it's whatever. Meanwhile, Hopper goes to Joyce to ask for some tips on how to make Mike and 11 stop kissing. Joyce says he just needs to have a talk with him and establish boundaries, and begins coaching him. Meanwhile, we see Nancy and Jonathan at the Hawkins Post. While Jonathan is respected as a photographer, the sexist douchebags there make Nancy work as a glorified gopher and make fun of her ideas. What assholes. Meanwhile, Dustin shows his friends what he's been up to at Nerd Camp. He made a bunch of devices, including a super cool radio called Cerebro that can communicate across the planet. That's actually really impressive. But here's what's even more impressive. It's that Dustin says he has a girlfriend, and her name is Susie, and she lives in Utah. Anyway, while Steve tries to hit on some girls and fails miserably, Hopper asks Joyce out to dinner. She has plans, but it's clear Hopper has the hots for her. Anyway, the kids head to a hill to use Cerebro, since it needs height, but Mike and 11 dip. They say it's 11's curfew, but they're just gonna go make out. On the way, Will senses that something is wrong, and it is because a bunch of rats are just kinda exploding inside a warehouse. Anyway, we then cut to the swimming pool, where Billy decides he's gonna hit on Karen, and he offers to give her personal swimming lessons, promising the workout of a lifetime. Ew. What's even more gross is that Karen says yes. Ugh. Back with Dustin, he has his friends set up Cerebro, only for Susie to not respond. I'm starting to think Dustin was lying about having a girlfriend. Anyway, while Joyce is still struggling to accept Bob's death, Nancy gets a call at the office. Something about infected rats. Oh boy. Later, Hopper decides to have a respectful talk with Mike and 11 about boundaries, but when the kids start laughing, Hopper decides to talk to Mike the old-fashioned way, and he's not laughing anymore. Meanwhile, Dustin's friends decide to go home, leaving Dustin alone with Cerebro, and that's when Cerebro picks up a signal, but it's not Susie, it's the Russians. We then see the lead scientist, Dr. Alexei, still trying to open the gate to the Upside Down. Meanwhile, Karen gets ready to see Billy, but after seeing her family, she decides against it. Thank goodness. Billy, meanwhile, is driving his car when something hits his windshield. He crashes into a warehouse, the same one with the rats. Billy then gets pulled in by the Mind Flayer, and we hear him scream as the episode ends. Uh-oh. The next episode sees Billy trying to escape the warehouse, but it's no use. He's already under the Mind Flayer's control. We then cut to 11, who's waiting for Mike to show up. When he doesn't, 11 calls him to see what's up. Turns out Hopper scared the it out of Mike by saying he'd stop him from seeing 11, so Mike's been avoiding her. He makes up some bullshit about his grandma being sick, and then he hangs up. Hopper celebrates this victory by asking Joyce out to dinner again, and he succeeds this time. Everything seems to be going his way today. Anyway, while Nancy and Jonathan go to check up on the call about the rats that Nancy got yesterday, Dustin reunites with Steve. I love their friendship. Anyway, after telling Steve about Susie, Dustin tells him about the Russian message he intercepted, and asks Steve for his help translating it. While that's happening, 11 goes to Max for advice, and Mike goes to Lucas. Max tells 11 that Mike is lying and that she needs to take revenge by ignoring him. Meanwhile, Lucas tells Mike that he screwed up, but he says he knows how to fix it. Teenage love. Meanwhile, Karen tries to talk to Billy, but Billy is too busy being possessed by the Mind Flayer and all the negatives that come along with that, so he doesn't really worry about anything else. Anyway, while Steve and Dustin are joined by Robin on their quest to translate the Russian message, Nancy and Jonathan visit Mrs. Driscoll, the lady that called Nancy. She tells them that a bunch of rats ate her fertilizer before saying she captured one of them. Oh boy. We then cut to Hopper, who's at Mayor Klein's office. You see, the people of Hawkins are protesting against the mall since it's killing local businesses, but Klein is a capitalist piece of who tells Hopper to get rid of the protesters. What an asshat. Back with 11, Max takes her shopping for the very first time, while Lucas helps Mike buy an apology gift for 11. Meanwhile, Joyce has noticed that all her magnets have stopped working, so she goes to Mr. Clark for help. Back with Nancy, she finds a lead on the rats, so she and Jonathan head out, but after they leave, the rat Mrs. Driscoll captured explodes. That's not all. The goo from the dead rat starts moving, and it escapes. What the hell was that? Meanwhile, Billy's trying to fight off the Mind Flayer, but it's no use. He's a goner. Anyway, Max and 11 are shopping, and they're having the time of their lives. The same can't be said for Mike, though, who's too broke to buy anything for 11. Anyway, while Robin and Dustin start translating the message, Max and 11 run into Mike and the boys. 11 then calls Mike a liar, dumps his ass, and just leaves. I'm sorry, but that was hilarious. We then cut to Hopper, who's getting rid of the protesters. He then gets a new shirt, dresses up all nice, and goes out to dinner with Joyce. At least that's what he wanted to do. In reality, Joyce got busy with Mr. Clark and totally forgot about their dinner. Ouch. Meanwhile, Dustin and Lucas translate the message, but realize that it's a coded message, and they're gonna have to decipher it. That's when Steve makes a huge discovery. The message is in Russian, but wasn't sent from Russia. Not only was it sent from Hawkins, it was sent from the inside the mall. Holy. Anyway, while Hopper gets super drunk and depressed after being stood up, Billy kidnaps a fellow lifeguard and takes her to the Mind Flayer. And it possesses the girl too. Looks like it's building an army, and that's bad news. Episode 3 starts with Max and 11 having a sleepover, and they decide to spy on the boys using 11's powers, and my goodness, teenage boys are such losers. Hopper comes home, and seeing no Mike, his mood instantly improves. Hilarious. Anyway, the girls start to make a game and start spying on other people too. Unfortunately, when 11 spies on Billy, she sees him with the girl he kidnapped and realizes something is seriously wrong. The next morning, Will wakes up Lucas and Mike. Will's tired of all this girlfriend bull. He just wants to play D&D. Man, he's so real for that. Meanwhile, Joyce visits Hopper and tells him about the magnets malfunctioning. And Hopper's upset about her standing him up, but Joyce is locked in on the magnets. She wants to go to Hawkins' lab and make sure the scientists aren't up to something again. Back with 11, she and Max go to check in on Billy, and he's not home. So they go check his bathroom, and there they find a bathtub full of ice packs and some lifeguard stuff in his dustbin, covered in blood. Yeah. Meanwhile, Nancy takes her rat story to the writer, who just make fun of her again. Damn. Anyway, while Dustin and Steve look around the mall for Russian spies, Dustin tells Steve that he should ask Robin out. Honestly, I think so too. She's pretty cool. Meanwhile, Mike and Lucas are too focused on their girlfriends and don't want to play D&D. This pisses off Will so bad he just storms out of the room, and Mike tries to explain to him that they're growing up, but Will says that's bull and just rides off in the rain. Damn. Meanwhile, 11 and Mike go looking for the missing lifeguard and learn that her name is Heather Holloway, the daughter of Tom Holloway, who's Nancy and Jonathan's boss. 11 looks for Heather with her powers and sees a red door. She goes inside and sees Heather. She asks 11 for help before she gets dragged away underwater. Yeah, she's a goner too. Anyway, while Hopper and Joyce go to investigate the abandoned Hawkins lab, Steve and Dustin are still looking for a Russian spy. But while they can't find any spies, Robin is cracking cracked the code. She knows what the message means. While they're doing that, Nancy decides she's going to bring Mrs. Driscoll's rat as proof of her story, and Jonathan goes with her. Meanwhile, Hopper and Joyce search Hawkins' lab, but it's empty. Hopper then tells Joyce he knows she's thinking of moving and tells her to stay, and it's actually really cute. That's when they hear something. Looks like someone is there after all. Anyway, Mike and Lucas go to Will's home to apologize, but he's not there. Will's at Castle Byers looking at all his pictures with his friends. He then gets pissed off, rips the pictures, and destroys the Castle Byers. And it's a very reasonable crash out if you ask me. Meanwhile, Nancy and Jonathan go to Mrs. Driscoll's house, only to find Mrs. Driscoll eating fertilizer? What? Back with Dustin, Steve, and Robin, it turns out that they were right. Russian spies are in Hawkins, and they're operating from the Starcourt Mall. Meanwhile, Hopper runs into a Russian spy of his own. They fight, and the spy beats Hopper's teeth in. Hopper's alive, but the Russian gets away. Meanwhile, Max and Eleven go to Heather's house to check on her, only to find Billy there, and he's having dinner with Heather and her family, and everything looks fine. But when they leave, Billy and Heather knock out Tom and his wife so they can be possessed by the Mind Flayer too. This is getting real out of hand, really fast. This next episode kicks off with Eleven still being worried about Heather, but Max tells her nothing's wrong, and they just hang out. Anyway, while Nancy and Jonathan see a possessed Mrs. Driscoll getting taken to the hospital, Tom and his wife wake up in the warehouse. There, Billy and Heather introduce them to the Mind Flayer, who is physically present in Hawkins. It then takes over their minds too. Oh boy. The next day, Hopper wakes up to find Joyce looking after him. Joyce explains that the guy that whooped Hopper left on a motorbike, and he realizes that Mayor Klein has something to do with this. Back at the mall, Robin comes up with a plan to infiltrate the Russians and figure out what they're doing. Meanwhile, the Mind Flayer possessed Tom Holloway fires Nancy and Jonathan. They were getting way too close to the truth. Meanwhile, Mike calls Eleven and Max over. It's an emergency, and all the friends meet minus the Russian spy chasing Dustin, and Will tells them that he thinks the Mind Flayer's back. They all believe him and start cooking up a plan to beat it. We then see Hopper and Joyce go to the mayor's office. Hopper asks Klein about the guy who attacked him, nicely at first. But when he doesn't answer, Hopper beats Klein senseless until he spills the beans. Turns out the guy that attacked Hopper works for the Starcourt Mall. You see, the company Starcourt wanted to buy some property, but the people of Hawkins didn't want to sell. So Starcourt bribed Klein, who pressured the people into selling. After learning this, Hopper says he wants to see the records for the land that Starcourt bought. So he just makes Klein come with him and Joyce. Pretty badass. Later, Nancy and Jonathan drive home and get into a huge fight. Nancy still thinks that she's onto something with this case, but Jonathan says she's wrong and blames her for getting him fired. Back at the mall, Robin knows how they're going to infiltrate the Russians, through the air vents. Unfortunately, none of them are small enough to fit in the air vents, so they have to ask Lucas's little sister Erica for help. Meanwhile, Eleven and her friends are spying on Billy. Eleven thinks that the Mind Flayer might be controlling him, so Mike comes up with a plan to find out. They're going to trap Billy in the sauna at the swimming pool. Anyway, while Erica goes through the air vents, Hopper and Joyce go to Klein's home. There, Klein gives them the records, and they then realize that the people from Starcourt are up to something devious. Later, Nancy goes to Karen for some advice on what to do, so Karen gives her the usual "I believe in you" speech, and tells her to finish the story if she believes in it. Meanwhile, while the gang gets their trap ready for Billy, they're not exactly on good terms. Will is mad at Lucas and Mike, and Eleven is also mad at Mike. Well, you don't have to be friends to save the world, right? While Hopper and Joyce go through each property, Erica sneaks through the vents and successfully infiltrates the Russian base. She opens it so Dustin, Steve, and Robin can see what the hell the Russians were up to. Back with the gang, they successfully lure Billy into the sauna and trap him there, and then they turn the heat up. Later, while Nancy goes to see Mrs. Driscoll, Dustin and the others find some weird green chemical in one of the boxes the Russians were transporting. That's when the room moves, and they realize it's not a room at all. It's an elevator, and it's going down. Meanwhile, Billy admits he's been controlled by the Mind Flayer and says he's sorry for doing all those bad things. He then starts screaming in pain, and Will says the Mind Flayer is here. We get a quick cut of Mrs. Driscoll being possessed and going insane in front of Nancy before we cut back to Billy, who breaks out of the sauna. Cue the fight between him and Eleven, and with some help from Mike, Eleven sends Billy flying through the wall, but he's still alive and still possessed, so he runs away. He makes it back to the warehouse, where we see that the Mind Flayer has possessed a lot of people. It officially has an army now. The next episode kicks off with Dustin, Steve, Erica, and Robin realizing they're stuck underground. This is why you don't play James Bond, people. Meanwhile, Hopper and Joyce go through one of the properties in Klein's records, and they find a hidden basement. There they find Dr. Alexei. What the hell is he doing there? Unfortunately, Alexei doesn't speak English, so they can't really communicate. And that's when the Russian that beat Hopper's ass at the lab shows up, and they start fighting again. With Joy's help, Hopper manages to grab Alexei and get the hell out of there. But the Russian is just gonna come after them. I'm just gonna call this Russian the Terminator from now on because he kinda looks like him. The next morning, Nancy calls Jonathan and tells him about Mrs. Driscoll. She tells him the Mind Flayer is back. Meanwhile, Hopper's car broke down, so he, Joyce, and Alexei are trekking through the woods, thinking of what to do. 11 tracks him using her powers, and the kids try and figure out what to do next. That's when Nancy and Jonathan show up to meet them. Back with Dustin, he's trying to contact someone using his radio when some Russians show up. Dustin and the others hide, and then they manage to get out of the elevator using the green liquid, which turns out to be an acid. With no other option, they decide to explore the underground Russian base. Meanwhile, Nancy, Jonathan, and the kids start piecing together what they know, and they think that Heather and her family might have been possessed too. So they head over to Heather's house to investigate. Back with Hopper, Joyce, and Alexei, they find a gas station. After getting some drinks, Hopper basically steals some poor guy's car, and the three of them drive off. We then cut to Dustin and the others. While walking through the underground base, Dustin and Steve realize that this is all probably connected to the Upside Down. That's when they pick up a Russian message on their radio. They're close to a communications room. Meanwhile, 11 and the others are searching for Heather's house, and they confirm that they've been possessed. They realize they need to find the Mind Flayer's base, and Will comes up with a plan. They should use Mrs. Driscoll. While the Terminator's tracking them, Hopper and the others go to meet none other than Murray Bowman. Turns out Murray can speak Russian, because of course he can. And even though he hates Russians, he's gonna help Joyce and Hopper translate what Alexei has to say. Meanwhile, Dustin and the others find the communication room and sneak inside. There's a Russian soldier there, so they knock him out, and they're trying to decide on what to do next, until Robin tells them they need to see something. And that something is that the Russians are opening a gate to the Upside Down, right under Hawkins. Holy... Meanwhile, Nancy and the others make it to the hospital. Nancy and Jonathan go to check on Mrs. Driscoll, while the kids stay behind.
Does your species like M&Ms?
Mike finally makes up with 11, but we have bigger problems. Because Tom and another possessed guy from the Hawkins Post are at the hospital, and they're chasing Nancy and Jonathan. After a long fight that was way too close for comfort, Nancy and Jonathan manage to kill the bastards. Unfortunately, their bodies explode just like the rats, and the goo from both of them combines and turns into a giant sludge monster. Episode 6 starts with Steve, Dustin, Erica, and Robin being chased by Russian soldiers. Steve and Robin let themselves get captured so Erica and Dustin can escape. Meanwhile, Nancy gets attacked by the big disgusting sludge monster, and it's about to kill her, until 11 saves the day yet again. Honestly, she should get paid for this. It'd be a super easy job. Anyway, 11 throws a sludge out of the window, and it escapes into the sewers. It then goes back to the warehouse, and Billy says it's time. For what exactly, I don't quite know yet. The next day, the Terminator visits Mayor Klein. He wants to know where Hopper is. Klein says that he has everyone looking for him, so the Terminator gives Klein 1 day to find Hopper. Speaking of Hopper, he, Joyce, and Bowman are trying to get some answers out of Alexei. And while it isn't a productive session, it is a funny one.
I have dealt with assholes like this my entire life.
Anyway, while Erica and Dustin look for a way out of the base, the Russians are interrogating Steve, and they're beating the out of him too. They think Steve works for the government or something, so they whoop him until he passes out. Then they tie him up with Robin and they leave them in a room. We then cut to 11, who's looking for Billy and the Mind Flayer. While she's doing that, Max and Mike get into a huge argument. Max says he's suffocating 11, and Mike says she's corrupting 11, and then admits that he loves her. Aww. That's when 11 walks in and says she found him. Back with Hopper, Bowman translates what Alexei has to say. He tells them what's happening. The Russians are hiding under Starcourt Mall and trying to reopen the gate to the Upside Down. Speaking of the base, Steve wakes up, so he and Robin try to escape. But when that doesn't work, the two just have a nice heart-to-heart, and it's really wholesome. Until the Russians come back. While the Russians inject Robin and Steve with truth serum, 11 decides that she's gonna look into Billy's memories and find where the Mind Flayer is hiding. So after seeing some of Billy's wholesome memories with his mom, 11 makes her way inside of his mind to find the Mind Flayer. Meanwhile, Hopper and Joyce inform Sam Owens, the nice doctor from season 2, about the Russians. before going back to Hawkins with Bowman and Alexei. Back with Steve and Robin, the Russians start asking questions, and Steve spills the beans about Dustin. Speaking of Dustin, he and Erica create a distraction and free Robin and Steve. Meanwhile, while all this is going down, Eleven is still going through Billy's memories, and she sees how his dad abused him as a kid. It's not an excuse for Billy being an asshole, but it definitely is an explanation. Anyway, Eleven then finds the warehouse the Mind Flayer's hiding at and tells her friends. But before she can get out of Billy's memories, the Mind Flayer traps Eleven. It then tells her it's gonna kill her and her friends. How nice. Eleven screams and gets out of Billy's head. Meanwhile, all the possessed people in Hawkins make their way to the warehouse. There, they explode, and their goo becomes a part of the Mind Flayer. It grows bigger and bigger and bigger until it bursts out of the warehouse. Jeez. Episode 7 starts with Hawkins enjoying the city fair. Did I mention it's the 4th of July? Anyway, Klein is yapping, and the Wheeler family's having fun, and the Mind Flayer is going after Eleven. Speaking of Eleven, she and her friends see the Mind Flayer charging at them, so they get ready to fight. While Dustin and Erica take Steve and Robin out of the base and back into Starcourt Mall, the rest of the gang begin their fight with the Mind Flayer. Eleven is the main weapon as always, but everyone else chips in too. They manage to cut off the Mind Flayer's disgusting tentacles, but it does hurt Eleven's leg. Eleven then rips its face, and they make a run for it. Back with Dustin, he hides the fully Steve and Robin in the cinema with Erica and goes to find a ride. Speaking of a ride, Hopper and Joyce are on their way back to Hawkins with Bowman and Alexei. Hopper and Joyce start arguing, so Bowman tells them to shut up and just get together already. I have a feeling that's gonna work again. Meanwhile, Eleven and the others break into a store to treat Eleven's wound and grab supplies, while Lucas stalks fireworks as weapons. Mike is about to confess his love to Eleven when they hear someone on the radio. It's Dustin! Mike kinda hears what Dustin is saying, but Dustin's radio dies before he can explain anything. Meanwhile, Steve and Robin throw up, and they're back to normal again. While Hopper and Joyce look for the kids at the fair, Eleven and the others head out to look for Dustin. And that's when some of Eleven's blood starts moving. The Mind Flayer has infected her leg. Back with Steve, he tells Robin that he likes her. Unfortunately, Robin plays for the other team. She likes girls. Poor Steve can't catch a damn break with these women. Anyway, while Billy tracks Eleven, Alexei and Bowman decide to have their fun at the fair. It's a good time as any, I guess. Back with Dustin, he and the others are still on the run from the Russians. His friends better get there soon. Meanwhile, Alexei is having the time of his life at the fair until the Terminator shows up and shoots him. Bowman helps Alexei to the side and goes to get help. Hopper then sees the Terminator and a bunch of other Russians surrounding him. So he tells Joyce to find Bowman and get the car, and he'll deal with the Russians. One big chase and fight scene later, Hopper gets the better of the Terminator and escapes with Joyce and Bowman. But Alexei, well, the poor bastard bites the dust.
I just left for a minute for a corn dog. A stupid corn dog.
Rest in peace, man, you were a good dude. Hopper grabbed a radio from one of the Russians, and Bowman uses it to find out where the kids are. Speaking of the kids, Dustin, Steve, Robin, and Erica are about to be gunned down by some Russians until Eleven saves them by chucking a car at them. Now that was pretty damn cool. Unfortunately, after that, Eleven almost faints, and that's when we see Eleven's leg. Something is moving inside of it. The last episode of Season 3 starts with Jonathan heating up a knife. He's gonna remove Eleven's infection. He cuts open the wound, and Eleven uses her powers to pull out the little piece of the Mind Flayer that was inside her. She throws it away and it gets stepped on by Hopper. And just like that, the gang is back together and it's bigger than ever. Seriously, there are 13 of them now. And all 13 of them have something to do. Dustin, Steve, Robin, and Erica head over to Cerebro so they can guide Hopper, Bowman, and Joyce, who are going to be infiltrating the Russian base, to close the gate. And Nancy, Jonathan, Lucas, Mike, and Max are supposed to take Eleven and Will and hide at Bowman's place. Unfortunately for them, Billy has sabotaged their car and he's chasing after them. Back with Hopper, Joyce, and Bowman, they head underground, kill some Russians, and steal their uniforms. Anyway, while Dustin and the others make it to Cerebro, Bowman's Russian helps him. Hopper and Joyce get inside the base. From there, Bowman gets into the vents and begins making his way through the base. Back at the mall, while everyone else tries to fix Nancy's car, Eleven realizes she can't use her powers anymore. And that's when the frickin' Mind Flayer comes crashing through the ceiling. Oh, and Hopper and Joyce agree to go on a real date. Finally! While Bowman makes his way through the vents, Steve and Robin realize something is very wrong at the mall, so they go back to help. And speaking of the mall, everyone is hiding from the Mind Flayer. Reminder, this is still a horror show. Anyway, while Bowman gets through the vents and completes the first stage of the plan, Lucas distracts the Mind Flayer and everyone runs back outside. Back with Hopper and Joyce, they're supposed to write a code to open the safe so that they can close the gate. One problem with that though. The code is Planck's constant, a super nerdy number that Hopper, Joyce, and Bowman don't know. Dustin and Erica don't know it either, so Dustin calls him some help. Meanwhile, Billy's about to run over Nancy, Jonathan, Will, and Lucas with his car, until Steve and Robin show up at the very last second to save them. Billy's out cold, but they're far from safe. The Mind Flayer is still after them. Meanwhile, we see who Dustin is contacting. It's Susie. Dustin asks her what Planck's constant is, and Susie says she'll tell him if he sings a song to make up for not talking to her all summer. Talk about timing. So Dustin and Susie sing their song, and Susie tells him Planck's constant, which Hopper uses to open the safe.
Gosh, I miss you, Dusty Bun.
I miss you more, Susie Pooh.
Anyway, while the Mind Flayer is chasing everyone else, Billy goes after Max, Mike, and 11. Max tries talking to Billy, but it's no use. He's completely under the Mind Flayer's control. He then knocks out Max and Mike and takes 11. While the Terminator shows up and starts fighting Hopper, Billy lays 11 down in front of the Mind Flayer. Wait, wasn't he just chasing Nancy and the others? Well, Nancy and the others are back at the mall too because of plot convenience, and they start pelting the Mind Flayer with fireworks. While that happens, Hopper's fight with the Terminator takes them both in front of the gate to the Upside Down, and Hopper is inches away from death. Meanwhile, 11 starts talking to Billy and reminds him he's human. 11's words work, and Billy is free of the Mind Flayer's control. The Mind Flayer then tries to kill 11, but Billy stops it. The Mind Flayer then attacks Billy, who sacrifices himself to save 11. Speaking of sacrifices, Dustin says they need to close the gate now. So Joyce just looks at Hopper standing in front of the gate, who tells her to close it, and she does. The gate closes in a big explosion, and the Mind Flayer drops dead. It's finally over. While Max mourns Billy's death, Joyce and Bowman escape the underground base, and Hopper is just gone. R.I.P. to the GOAT. After that, Sam shows up with the U.S. military. Thanks for showing up, you useless assholes. While Joyce reunites with Will, 11 realizes Hopper's dead, and she just cries. Damn. 3 months later, life in Hawkins goes on. With the mall closed, Steve and Robin are job hunting.
So then join in, Dusty Bun.
Yeah, come on, Dusty Bun, why don't you join us?
Meanwhile, Joyce has sold her house, which means that she's moving to California, along with Jonathan and Will. This is devastating for Johnsy, or Nanathan. We'll just say Nancy and Jonathan, who share a heartbreaking goodbye. Meanwhile, 11 still doesn't have her powers. With Hopper gone, she's still going to live with Joyce, Jonathan, and Will, which means she's going to California too. But before she leaves, she tells Mike that she loves him and kisses him. As the friends say goodbye to each other, Joyce finds the heart-to-heart speech Hopper was going to give Mike and 11. She gives it to 11, and 11 reads it, and it's beautiful. Hopper absolutely loved 11. 11 cries as she reads it, but decides to follow Hopper's advice. She's going to keep moving on. With that, Joyce gives her home one last look and then shuts the door. But our story is far from over, because in Kamchatka, a place in Russia, some Russian soldiers take a prisoner deep underground. There they lock the prisoner in a room. Why? Well, to feed the Demogorgon they're hiding, of course. Okay, so here's the thing about Season 4. The showrunners really wanted to go all out with it and make a big, grand sort of thing with it. Unfortunately, to do that, they needed to, well, change some stuff. And as a result, some retconning happened. So things that you thought happened, turns out they really didn't. And some things that did happen just happened in a different way than you remember. And with that out of the way, let's get into it. The season starts with a horrifying realization. Dr. Brenner, the man who put 11 through all of those experiments, really is alive. We then see a flashback of Dr. Brenner from 1979. Back then, he was working with a bunch of super-powered kids. You can call them 11's siblings. One day, the alarm started blaring and Dr. Brenner was knocked out cold. When he woke up, he saw that all the kids he was working with, as well as the guards and the scientists, were dead. Wow, all of them except for 11. Did she kill him? You'll just have to find out. Also, in case you were wondering, yes, this was a retcon thing. Back in the present, it's been 6 months since the end of Season 3, and holy schmoly, these guys have grown up fast. Anyway, 11 is writing a letter to Mike about her life in Cali. She pretends like it's all hunky-dory, but really it's not. She's a bit of a weirdo at school, and the other kids pick on her. Quick update on everyone else. Will is super into painting now. Joyce has a new job, and Jonathan's a full-blown pothead. Also, Jonathan has a new friend named Argyle. Argyle is also a stoner, and he's the frickin' best. Anyway, back in Hawkins, things are complicated. Stephen and Robin are best friends now, and Nancy's in charge of the school newspaper. But those are about the only positives. Mike is supposed to go to California to visit 11 tomorrow, and he has a big D&D game with his friends tonight. Meanwhile, Max is still struggling with Billy's death, and she broke up with Lucas. Speaking of Lucas, he's on the high school basketball team, and it's captained by Jason Carver. Jason is tall, blonde, and he's dating a girl named Chrissy Cunningham. This will all be important later, so don't you worry your pretty little mind. Anyway, Lucas has a big basketball game tonight. It's the championship game. Unfortunately, it's also supposed to be the end of the D&D campaign that Lucas, Dustin, and Mike have been doing all season. So Lucas asks Mike to reschedule the D&D game. Back with Joyce, she gets a package from Russia? Inside is a doll. Meanwhile, 11 gives a presentation on her hero, and she chose Jim Hopper as her hero. Unfortunately, there's a girl in her class named Angela, and Angela's a total bitch.
I thought this was a presentation about a historical hero.
She makes fun of 11 and Hopper, and 11 just starts crying and storms out. Poor little girl. I really hope Angela gets run over by a train. For all intents and purposes and legal reasons, this is a joke. Anyway, we then cut back to Hawkins, where Max is seeing a school counselor. Max is clearly haunted by Billy's death, but she refuses to admit it. Lucas asks her to come to his basketball game, but she doesn't want to. She just wants to be alone. Later, Max is in the bathroom when she hears Chrissy throwing up in one of the stalls. Chrissy is a good old-fashioned anorexic, thanks to the trauma her mom put her through. Again, important later. After that, we are introduced to the one, the only, the King of Hawkins, D&D, Eddie Munson. Eddie is a guitar-playing, nerdy, rock-and-rolling weirdo. In the best way possible, you see. The campaign that Mike and his friends have been playing is Eddie's D&D campaign. And when they suggest postponing it, Eddie tells them to just find someone to sub in for Lucas. Oh, and their D&D group is called the Hellfire Club. Pretty cool if you ask me. Anyway, while Joyce asks Bowman for advice on what to do with the doll, Mike and Dustin can't find a single person that wants to play D&D in their entire school. So Dustin decides to expand their search. Meanwhile, Chrissy heads into the woods to buy pot from Eddie. Wow, that's surprising, but what's even more surprising is that the two actually get along with each other. They'd make a weirdly cute couple. Really weird, but cute. Back in California, Angela trips over 11, and one of her friends breaks her model of Hopper. I genuinely hope these assholes die. Again, for all intents and purposes, this is a joke. Will tries consoling her, but she just cries. How about you stand up to those pricks, huh, Will? Anyway, Joyce breaks open the Russian doll and finds a hidden message inside. Hopper? Wait, Hopper's alive? I'm sure you didn't see that one coming, because I definitely didn't. Unless you saw the trailer for season 4, but... Anywho, while Robin is thirsting over a fellow band member named Vicky, we see who Dustin and Mike picked for D&D. It's Erica. After that, we see two things happen at once. Lucas's basketball game and Eddie's D&D campaign. While Lucas gets subbed in, the D&D campaign is going off. Eventually, Lucas wins the basketball game with a last-second shot, and Erica wins the campaign with a perfect roll. After the match, Lucas decides to hang out with the cool kids and ignores his friends. No wonder Max dumped him. Anyway, Max hears about Lucas's shot on the radio and then turns it off. As she goes to feed her dog, she sees Eddie coming home with Chrissy. It's not like that though. Chrissy just wants something a bit stronger than pot. But why is Chrissy looking to get high in the first place? Well, you see, Chrissy has been hearing and seeing things, and she wants to shut down the noise in her mind. Unfortunately, there's no escaping it. Chrissy sees a vision of her old house, and she sees something chasing her. She tries to run away, but she can't. In the real world, Eddie thinks Chrissy is having a seizure or something, and tries to wake her up.
Chrissy, wake up! I don't like this! Chrissy, wake up!
And that's when the monster catches up to Chrissy. You'll come to know him as Vecna. Vecna tells Chrissy it's time to end her suffering, and then he murders her in the most brutal way imaginable. And all poor Eddie can do is watch and scream. The next episode starts with us seeing Hopper actually survived the explosion at the end of season 3. He was just out cold. How convenient, he remembered to put his plot armor on that morning. Anyway, back at the present, Max wakes up to see the cops surrounding Eddie's trailer. Eddie's uncle, who owns the trailer, lets the cops in. And Max catches a glimpse of Chrissy's mangled body. Eesh. On to something less depressing then. Mike makes it to California, and he's super happy to see 11. And he's happy to see Will too, but something's off between them. Anyway, after meeting Jonathan and Argyle too, 11 wants to show Mike all of her favorite spots. While Bowman is on his way to meet Joyce, Steve and Robin are just messing around, and then they see that someone from Hawkins High died last night. Soon, everyone sees the news, including Jason, and they wonder why bad stuff keeps happening in Hawkins. Meanwhile, Max goes to see Dustin and tells him that she saw Eddie with Chrissy last night. Sometime later, the lights flickered. After that, Eddie screamed and drove away in his truck. Dustin refuses to believe that Eddie is a killer, so that leaves one option. Something from the Upside Down is messing with him again. Meanwhile, Bowman meets Joyce and tells her that he thinks this whole thing is some elaborate trap by the KGB to capture Joyce, but Joyce says there's a chance that Hopper is alive, and they have to go look for him. We then see what happened to Hopper after the explosion. He woke up and got captured by the Russians, who tortured the hell out of him because they thought he was working for the American government. And I mean, technically he is, but it's more on a local scale as opposed to a federal scale, so it doesn't really matter. Back in the present, 11, Mike, and Will go skating. Now, 11 lies about having friends and going to parties because she doesn't want to seem like a loser. Will tells her to knock it off, but 11 doesn't listen to him. Back in Hawkins, the police question Jason about Chrissy. Jason realizes that Chrissy is super dead, and he thinks Eddie did it. Uh-oh. We then cut to Nancy, who's on her way to investigate Chrissy's murder with their newspaper editor, Fred Benson. Fred is a super sweet guy who was involved in a brutal car crash last year. More on that later. Unfortunately, Fred starts seeing and hearing things, just like Chrissy was. So boy. Back in Cali, while Jonathan gets girlfriend advice from Argyle, Mike, Will, and 11 get a visit from Angela. Angela and her friends then proceed to publicly bully and embarrass 11, and the poor girl just runs off crying. While Mike chases her, and once again, Will did not do absolutely anything to help. Speaking of help, Bowman helps Joyce call the number on the note from Russia. A man picks up and tells them to bring 40 grand to Alaska if they ever want to see Hopper again, before hanging up. Back in Hawkins, Jason rallies his teammates to hunt down Eddie, while Dustin, Max, and Robin are out looking for him too. Robin eventually finds a lead, and the four of them head out to look for Eddie. Meanwhile, Nancy and Fred are investigating Chrissy's murder. Nancy questions Eddie's uncle, and he says Eddie couldn't have done this. While she's doing that, Fred starts hearing a large clock chiming in the woods, and he follows it. There he sees a bunch of dead people who call Fred a murderer. What is going on with this guy? Meanwhile, Joyce and Bowman figure out that Hopper is stuck in a Russian prison, and the guy Joyce talked to on the phone is a guard at that prison. They are spot on. He's a good-looking son of a gun, and his name is Dmitry Antonov. While Joyce heads to the bank to get Dmitry's 40 grand, Mike and Will are looking for 11. Mike calls out Will for not telling him that 11 was lying, and for moping around all day. Will's like, "Oh yeah, well you barely even called me." And Mike just says that Will should have called more if he wanted to talk more. And I 100% agree with Mike here. Anyway, 11 decides she's had enough of Angela's so she takes a roller skate and smacks Angela in the face with it. Everyone reacts like she's done a bad thing, but I personally think Angela deserved that. Meanwhile, Dustin and the others find Eddie, and he's seriously freaked out. He tells them what happened with Chrissy, and they tell him about the Upside Down. At least Eddie knows he's not crazy now. Anyway, while they exchange stories, poor old Fred keeps seeing things, and he tries to run away from them, only to come face to face with Vecna.
I want you.
And he does the same thing to Fred that he did to Chrissy, that poor bastard. We then see Vecna in the Upside Down, and you can tell he's planning something big. Episode 3 kicks off in Nevada, of all places. Dr. Sam Owens and his wife are enjoying a peaceful night when they get a visit from Lieutenant Colonel Jack Sullivan, the army man that's overseeing the murder case in Hawkins. Now, Sullivan knows that this all ties back to 11, and he wants Sam to tell him where 11 is. If that sounds confusing, that's because it's a retcon. Anyway, Sam just says that 11 is dead, but Sullivan knows she's alive, and he's gonna find her. Back in Cali, Argyle and Jonathan take Will, Mike, and 11 home after the whole Angela incident. They go home to see Murray is there, and they all have dinner. Anyway, Mike is upset at 11 for assaulting Angela, and 11 is upset that Mike is upset at her. I hate teenagers. Back in Hawkins, Lucas joins Jason and the cool kids in their search for Eddie. Yeah, to say Lucas pisses me off would be an understatement. Meanwhile, Dustin and the others meet Eddie, and they try to come up with a plan to defeat Vecna without 11. That's when they see police cars and an ambulance go by. They found Fred's body. As the cops cover up the body, they question Nancy, who is super traumatized. Lucky for Nancy, her friends show up. Back with Mike, he tries talking to 11, and 11 thinks she's a monster that doesn't belong anywhere, and she's convinced that Mike doesn't love her anymore. All Mike had to say was, "I love you?" Why is is everyone in this show so stupid? After that, the police show up. They're there to arrest 11. Well, Mike promises to get 11 out, but it doesn't look like she believes him. Anyway, while Joyce and Murray are on a plane to Alaska, Dimitri talks with Hopper. The plan is simple. Joyce will meet with a friend of Dimitri's named Yuri. She gives Yuri the money, and Yuri will fly a private jet over to help Hopper escape, and Hopper needs to make sure he gets to that jet. It's gonna be a tight window. Back in Hawkins, Steve, Nancy, Dustin, Robin, and Max split up to look for clues on Vecna. Meanwhile, Lucas joins Jason and his buddies as they assault Eddie's friends, asking them where Eddie is. So they tell Jason that if anyone knows where Eddie is, it's Dustin. He was calling around looking for Eddie. And Lucas doesn't say a single word as Jason decides to hunt his own best friend. I know Lucas is going to become good again and whatever, but he's still a bitch in my books. Anyway, 11 gets questioned by the police before she's shipped off to juvenile detention, and there's nothing Mike can do about it. He can't even visit her. Meanwhile, Hopper bribes a fellow Russian inmate to break his leg? It'll be important later, I swear. Anyway, while Nancy and Robin chase a lead Nancy has, Max decides to check the school counselor's notes on Chrissy, so Max steals the counselor's office keys. While that's happening, Jason and his boys are searching Dustin's home. Lucas manages to sneak in and contacts Dustin via a radio. Dustin and Max tell Lucas about Eddie and where he's hiding. And boy howdy was that a huge mistake, because Lucas tells Jason where Eddie's hiding, all to be cool with the popular kids. Meanwhile, 11 is being transported to juvie when their car is stopped by some government cars. Hey, it's Dr. Sam! Anyway, while Joyce and Murray make it to Alaska, we see why Hopper had the other prisoner hit his foot, so he could escape the ankle cuffs on him. Pretty smart, but also really gnarly. Meanwhile, Nancy and Robin find something. It turns out that this isn't the first time Vecna has attacked. He's done it once before, and a man named Victor Creel was blamed for the murders. Meanwhile, Max, Steve, and Dustin break into the school counselor's office and check the files. There they see that Chrissy and Fred were seeing the school counselor. And it turns out that Lucas was actually misleading Jason and his friends. Thank goodness! Back with Sam, he gives 11 the rundown. Hawkins is in danger, and they need her help. 11 says her powers are gone, and Sam says he's got a way to get them back, but only if 11 wants them back. 11 agrees, and they head out. Meanwhile, Sam goes through Fred and Chrissy's files and realizes she's been going through the same things those two were. The episode ends as Max hears a large clock chiming, and she follows it.
No! God, please, no! No!
The next episode starts with Sam's government friends telling Mike, Will, and Jonathan about what's happening in Hawkins, and how 11 has gone to get her powers back. What's more, 2 agents are going to be surveilling them at all times to make sure that they stay put. Mike hates this, but once again, he can't do anything about it. The safety of everyone he loves is at risk here. Meanwhile, Max tells everyone about seeing the large clock. Apparently both Chrissy and Fred died within 24 hours of their first vision. This is Vecna's curse, and Max has been hit by it. That's when Lucas shows up and tells them that Jason is looking for Dustin, but that's a problem for later. The next day, Jason goes looking for Lucas at his home, but he's not there, and Jason realizes he's been duped. Meanwhile, at the Wheeler house, Dustin and the others have realized that Victor Creel is the only person to have ever survived Vecna's curse. Nancy and Robin want to talk to him, but to do that, they have to pose as college students and convince the director of Penhurst Mental Hospital to let them do the interview. Anyway, while Joyce and Murray head out to the ransom spot, Dimitri tells Hopper that he has a 1 in 100 shot at actually escaping. And those odds might go down because another guard is starting to get suspicious. Anyway, Mike, Will, and Jonathan decide to ditch their protectors and go back to Hawkins. How, you may ask? With Argyle, of course. Back in Hawkins, Max writes everyone letters in case she dies, and she tells Steve to take her home. She's not going to spend her last day alive in Mike's basement. Honestly, she's real for that one. While that's happening, Nancy and Robin go to Penhurst Mental Hospital and talk to the director. Robin manages to convince him with a passionate speech, and the girls are in. Meanwhile, Joyce and Murray meet Yuri, and they wait while Yuri counts the money. Back with Hopper, he makes his move. It involves some fighting, and a dead Russian, and blowing up a cabin with dynamite, but in the end, Hopper manages to get on a snowmobile, and he escapes while the other prisoners cheer him on. Back in Hawkins, Steve takes Max home, where she leaves letters for her family, and she then sees another vision of Vecna, but wakes up before anything happens, and she doesn't tell her friends about it. Great job, Max. Meanwhile, the director of Penhurst takes Robin and Nancy to meet Victor, but he's starting to think they're kinda sus. Anyway, they go to speak with Victor, and they see that he's missing his eyes. Yeesh. Back with Mike, he and Will finally make up and agree to be best friends again. Jonathan then says it's time to go when Sullivan's soldiers burst into their house and start shooting. One of the agents gets shot, but the other one manages to take the kids outside. He gets shot too, though, and outside they jump in Argyle's car and they get the hell out of Dodge. Meanwhile, Joyce and Murray wait for Yuri to confirm that Hopper is alive.
If your friend is dead, I could save myself trouble and fuel.
Speaking of Hopper, he makes it to the pickup spot and almost cries of happiness when he eats some peanut butter. Unfortunately, there's no happy ending here because Yuri betrayed them. He gave up Hopper's location to the guards and he told Dimitri's warden that he was corrupt. And he Joyce and Murray so that he could hand him over to the KGB. Well, they're all screwed now. Back in Hawkins, Max goes to Billy's grave. She has a letter for him too. Lucas tells her to stop and talk to him, but Max just doesn't. Stupid teenagers, really. Meanwhile, Nancy and Robin get Victor's story about how a demon killed his wife, his daughter, and his son. From it, they learn two things. One, Vecna targets people who feel guilty about something, and two, the only way to stop Vecna's curse is music. Unfortunately, their interview is cut short because the director has found out that they lied their way in there, and he's called the cops. Uh-oh, busted. Back with Max, she sits at Billy's grave and reads the letter out loud, and it's a heartbreaking scene. And it shows that despite all their differences, Billy and his sacrifice meant something to Max. Not only that, but Max blames herself for not doing anything to save Billy. When she's done reading the letter, Vecna uses the guilt to invade Max's mind. He's here to kill her. As she runs away from Vecna in her mind, Steve realizes something's wrong, so Dustin starts contacting Nancy and Robin. Speaking of the girls, they run away from the guards and escape in their car. They then talk to Dustin on the radio and tell him that the key is music, specifically music that means something to the person. Meanwhile, Max keeps running and ends up in what I can only describe as hell. She's in Vecna's lair. There, Vecna captures her and is about to kill her. But back in the real world, Dustin asks Lucas what Max's favorite song is. So he picks Running Up That Hill by Kate Bush, and he puts it on Max's ears, right before she starts floating in the air like Chrissy and Fred did. But unlike them, Max has friends to rely on. So with the music showing her a way out, Max breaks free from Vecna and runs towards her friends. Vecna tries everything to stop her, but he can't, and Max wakes up. She falls down, and her friends grab her. She survived Vecna's curse. Holy schmoly, that was super intense. The following episode kicks off with Mike, Will, Jonathan, Argyle, and the agent on the run from Sullivan's men. The agent is bleeding out, so he gives Mike a pen and tells the boys to look for Nina before dying. Well, that was no help. Meanwhile, Sam takes Eleven to a secret facility out in Nevada where Eleven is horrified. She comes face to face with Brenner. Brenner tries talking to her, but Eleven immediately makes a run for it. Unfortunately, the guards stop her, and a doctor gives her a sleeping injection. She passes out in Brenner's arms. I'm sure Sam has a plan, but I do not like where it's going. Back with Hopper, he gets the living hell beaten out of him before he's thrown down a cell with Dimitri, who's also been taken prisoner. Dimitri tells Hopper that Yuri betrayed them, and Hopper has just one concern. Where is Joyce? Well, she and Murray are tied up in Yuri's plane. He's gonna be handing them over to the KGB. Back in Hawkins, Eddie is still hiding. Meanwhile, Max draws out Vecna's lair, and Nancy realizes something. She puts together the drawings and realizes that Vecna's lair is Victor Creel's old home. Whoa! Meanwhile, Eleven wakes up. Kind of. You see, Brenner is running some kind of test on her, and it's making her experience her past. She wakes up in Hawkins' lab, back before she broke out. There she sees all her siblings, as well as an older boy named Henry. More on him soon. Anyway, while Eleven is trapped in this nightmare, Sam says that he thinks this is a bad idea, but Brenner says she can take it. Meanwhile, Mike and the others bury the dead agent, and after that they have no idea what to do. That's when Mike remembers the pen the agent gave him. He opens it up, and inside there's a note with a phone number on it. Hey, at least they have a lead now.
We've had it this whole time. You got his digits, man?
Meanwhile, Dimitri and Hopper are inside a cell, and Hopper's devastated. He blames himself for Joyce getting captured and calls himself a curse. That's when they hear a monster screaming from inside the prison, and Dimitri says they're gonna die in here. Man, I just love the optimism of these two. Back in Hawkins, while some agents meet with Eddie's uncle, Jason and his friends attend Chrissy's funeral. There, Jason's friend, Patrick, has visions of a large clock. Uh-oh. After the funeral, Jason and his friends make a list of places they're going to search to find Eddie, and they have his location on the list. Meanwhile, Max and the gang break into Victor Creel's house, which has been abandoned for a long long time. Inside, Max sees a large clock, the same one that she and all of Vecna's victims saw in their last visions. Nancy realizes the answer to Vecna's mystery are here. They just have to find them. Anyway, while Joyce and Murray start cooking up a plan to take down Yuri, 11 is still stuck in her dream. Every time she tries to escape, she ends up in the same room. Brenner tells her that this is one of 11's memories, but one that she suppressed a long time ago. And the only way to get out is to remember it. So 11 starts playing out the memory. We then see where 11 actually is. Inside a sensory deprivation tank called Nina. Oh. Back with Mike, he and the others call the number they found and realize it's a computer, and they need a hacker. And the only hacker they know is Dustin's girlfriend, Susie. So while the boys head out to find Susie, Jason Patrick and another one of Jason's friends show up where Eddie is hiding, and he's in big trouble. Meanwhile, Steve is looking through Victor Creel's house and sort of has a moment with Nancy. Meanwhile, Lucas and Max have a moment of their own before lights start flickering all around them. Oh boy. Meanwhile, 11 is reliving her memory of doing tests with Brenner when she suddenly sees blood on her hands. 11 walks out and starts seeing all of her dead siblings in the real world. 11 starts going into cardiac arrest, but Brenner doesn't stop the experiment. You know what? You, Brenner. Meanwhile, Joyce and Murray break free from their restraints and start fighting Yuri. The good news is that Murray knows karate, and he knocks out Yuri. The bad news is that he was the only one who could fly the plane, so Joyce and Murray strap in and make a crash landing. Anyway, while Max and the others start to follow the lights in Victor Creel's house, Jason and Patrick find Eddie, and Eddie tries escaping on a boat, so Jason and Patrick swim after him. Meanwhile, Max and the others follow the light to a room and realize that Vecna's inside the room, just in the upside down. Back with Eddie, Jason and Patrick are following him when Vecna kills Patrick right in front of Jason and Eddie. Meanwhile, the doctors wake 11 up, but she's had enough of this, so she smacks Brenner in the head and makes a run for it. The guards grab her, and 11 screams and sends them flying. Hey, she has her powers back. Well, kinda. She tries to use her powers to blow up Brenner, but it doesn't work. 11 says she doesn't understand, but Brenner says he does. So even though she doesn't want to, 11 decides to stay with Brenner and get her powers back. In episode 6, we start with the cops finding Jason holding Patrick's mangled body. Jason tells the cops what happened and they don't believe him. But Jason has his own theory. Eddie's been possessed by the devil. Great theory, bud. While Sullivan torches one of Sam's men to find out where they're hiding 11, Brenner explains to 11 that she still has powers, but she's just forgotten how to use them. So by going through her repressed memories, she'll remember how to use them again. Sounds simple enough. Meanwhile, Max and the others find out that Patrick died, and that the police are looking for Eddie again. That's when Eddie contacts them on the radio and tells them to meet him in the woods. Meanwhile, Mike and the others make it to Susie's house, and it is full of children. You know, Susie's parents were getting busy. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, after Argyle falls in love with Susie's oldest sister, Eden, they find Susie on the roof and ask her for help. Meanwhile, we see what happened to Joyce and Murray. They survived. Yuri is alive too, and they have him tied up. They force Yuri to help them find Hopper, and the traitor doesn't have much of a choice. Speaking of Hopper, he and the prisoners are taken from their cells and into a room full of food. Everyone is super happy and they start eating, except for Hopper. You see, Hopper knows why the Russians are giving them this food, so they can be used as toys for this monster the Russians have. Meanwhile, we see that 11, in her memory, is talking to Henry. From now on, I'm going to talk about the memory like it is a separate event. Henry talks to 11 and tells her that Brenner is a liar. Not only that, he tells 11 that her mom tried to save her when she was little. 11 is processing this when Brenner walks in and takes all the kids for a surprise. Back in Hawkins, Dustin and the others are looking for Eddie. On their way there, Lucas and Max have a heart-to-heart, and Nancy opens up to Robin about her relationship problems with Jonathan. After that, they finally find Eddie. Meanwhile, the police try explaining everything to the people of Hawkins until Jason shows up. He gives a big rah-rah speech and convinces everyone to look for Eddie and his friends, and it works.
Let us cast out this evil and save Hawkins together!
All of Hawkins is looking for the gang now, except for Dustin, Mike, and Lucas's parents. While Mike and the boys convince Susie to help them, Karen decides to call the cops. I know she means well, but she's seriously about to screw the good guys over. Back with Dustin and his friends, they're talking about their next move. That's when Dustin realizes his compass is malfunctioning. And if you remember season 1, that means that there's a gate open to the Upside Down somewhere. So they start moving towards the gate. Meanwhile, in 11's memory, Brenner has the kids play a game. They have to push each other out of the circles with their powers. Whoever is standing last wins. One of the boys manages to push everyone out, and then it's Eleven's turn. But Eleven channels the memory of her mother trying to save her and sends the boy flying back. She wins the game. Always been a badass, hasn't she? Meanwhile, Joyce, Murray, and Yuri make it to Yuri's base. There, they come up with a plan to sneak into the prison. You see, Yuri was supposed to bring Joyce and Murray to the prison, so they're gonna tie Yuri's mouth shut and pretend like he's Murray, while Murray is gonna pretend to be Yuri, who knew speaking Russian could be so useful. Speaking of Hopper, he gets into a fight with Dmitri after their meal, which makes the guards lock them up again. But that was all a ruse. Hopper did it so that he could get a lighter from one of the guards, and they're going to use it to fight the monster. Meanwhile, with some help from their siblings, Susie distracts her dad and gets Mike the location for Nina. She's a genius! Back in Hawkins, while the police are still looking for Eddie and the gang, they make it to Lover's Lake. The gate is here somewhere. So Steve and the grown-ups get on a boat and look for the gate, while Max, Dustin, and Lucas stay behind. Back in Eleven's memory, she sees Henry getting tortured. She's then bullied by her siblings, who threaten to kill her if she snitches on them. So they retconned her childhood from being a government lab rat into a government lab rat that was also bullied. How lovely. Anyway, Eleven wakes up and she's pieced together the story. She killed all of her siblings. At least that's what she thinks. Meanwhile, Nancy realizes that the gate is underwater, so Steve dives in to check it out. Back with the kids, they realize that the cops have made it to Lover's Lake, and while they tried to hide, Steve finds the gate and reports it to the friends on the boat, only to get dragged into the Upside Down by a tentacle. While Dustin, Max, and Lucas get caught by the cops, Nancy, Robin, and Eddie decide to go in after Steve. And he's gonna need that help because he's being strangled to death by demon bats in the Upside Down. The next episode starts in the Upside Down, with Nancy, Robin, and Eddie helping Steve kill the demon bats, saving his life. That's when they realize that there are more demon bats chasing them, so they head into the woods. Meanwhile, Sullivan finally forces Sam's agents to give up the location of Nina. Well, that's not good. Speaking of Nina, Eleven still can't use her powers. She thinks she's killed all of her siblings and calls herself a monster, so Brenner decides to show her what really happened in Hawkins' lab that day. Back in Hawkins, the police are questioning Max, Lucas, and Dustin in front of their parents at the Wheeler household. But when they refuse to tell the truth, the cops decide to question them one at a time. While that's happening, Nancy patches up Steve in the Upside Down and they share a look. Anyway, they decide to go to Nancy's home in the Upside Down to get the guns she has in her room. Items in the real world exist in the Upside Down too? Back in Russia, Dmitri and Hopper have a heart-to-heart, and they've actually become friends. Meanwhile, Murray poses as Yuri to get into the prison, and it works. Back in Eleven's memories, we see Brenner punish the kid who bullied Eleven with an electric collar. This man is the devil.
That you're somehow immune to the rules, is that it?
Back in the Upside Down, Steve and the others are on their way to Nancy's house. There, Eddie tells Steve that Nancy didn't waste a second in going after Steve when he was in danger. He tells Steve that Nancy clearly loves him and that they should get back together. Honestly, I don't know how to feel about that one. That's when an earthquake hits the Upside Down, so they hurry on over to Nancy's house. Meanwhile, Dustin and Lucas start piecing the puzzle back together, and they realize that Vecna is working for the Mind Flayer. He's opening the gates to the Upside Down all over Hawkins. Meanwhile, Nancy goes to her bedroom, but doesn't find any guns. That's when she realizes a crazy discovery. The Upside Down might be a mirror image of Hawkins, but it's not a copy of Hawkins in the present. It's a copy of Hawkins in the past. That's when Steve hears Dustin talking, since he's in the real-world version of Nancy's house, and so they decide to do what Will did in Season 1. They talk through the lights. They signal SOS in Morse code, and Dustin and Lucas know their friends are in the Upside Down. Meanwhile, Murray meets the prison warden and perfectly plays his role as Yuri. The warden takes Murray, Joyce, and Yuri to a show, and that show is going to be Hopper, Dmitri, and the other prisoners fighting for their lives against the monster. Joyce is relieved to see Hopper, but he's in big trouble right now. Back in Eleven's memory, she sees all her bullies staring at her. That's when Henry tells her the truth. Brenner actually wanted Eleven to be bullied. Not only that, but he wants the bullies to kill Eleven. Why? Because Brenner thinks she's too powerful to control. Luckily, Henry wants to help her and gives her his key card. Meanwhile, Dustin, Lucas, and Erica communicate with Steve and the others using a light board. Dustin tells them that Vecna opens a gate every time he murders someone. So, Steve and the others decide to go to Eddie's trailer in the Upside Down. Meanwhile, Lucas, Dustin, Erica, and Max go to Eddie's trailer in the real world, ditching the cops and their families. Back with 11, she uses Henry's keycard to get out of the lab and into the boiler room below. There, Henry shows her the way out, and he can't come himself. You see, Brenner put a tracking chip inside Henry. If he goes with 11, Brenner would find them both. So 11 says she'll remove the tracking chip, and then they can escape together. You know, teamwork makes the dream work. Back in Russia, Joyce and Murray watch on as the doors holding the monster open. Hopper tries to light his weapon on fire, but the lighter isn't working, and when the doors open, there's a moment of silence before a Demogorgon pops out and starts killing the prisoners. No matter how hard they try, I don't think the creators will ever make a monster scarier than the Demogorgon. Seeing this, Murray pulls his gun on the warden and orders him to free Hopper, but the warden says he'd rather die. So Murray takes the warden hostage. Meanwhile, Hopper finally lights his weapon on fire and he scares the Demogorgon back, saving Dimitri's life. While Hopper holds off the Demogorgon, Murray deals with the Russians in the control room. After knocking them all out, Joyce opens the door behind Hopper and Dimitri, and they make their way inside. After Hopper tosses one badass spear throw right into the Demogorgon's mouth, Hopper and Dimitri are safe. And that's when Hopper sees Joyce, and they just hug. How's that for an emotional reunion? Speaking of reunions, Steve and the others make it to Eddie's trailer where they see the gate, as well as Dustin and the others on the other side. You gotta admit, that is a really cool shot. Back in 11's memory, she removes the tracking chip in Henry before they both get cornered by the guards. But it turns out that wasn't just a tracking chip. It was a way to suppress Henry's powers. Yep, Henry has powers just like 11, and he uses them to kill the guards. He then shows 11 his tattoo. He's 001, the very first kid Brenner worked on. Holy... Henry then asks 11 to wait in a room, while he finds them a way out. Meanwhile, Dustin and the kids make a rope for Steve and the grown-ups to climb with. Robin goes first, and Eddie follows, and they make it back to the real world A-okay. Nancy goes next, but she falls inside Steve's swimming pool. You see, Nancy is still guilty about Barb's death, and Vecna has used that guilt to put her under his curse. Oh no. Meanwhile, 11 is done waiting, so she goes outside and sees dead bodies everywhere. That's when she realizes what happened. She wasn't the monster that killed those kids. It was Henry. Holy sh*. This next part is actually insane, so listen closely. Nancy's inside Vecna's mind realm, and 11 is inside her memory, but somehow they both receive the same information. You see, I never told you Henry's full name. It's Henry Creel. He's Victor Creel's son.
You were so close.
Stay with me now. You see, Henry was a gifted child. He was born with powers, but he was also born with a hatred for the human race. After seeing inside his family's minds, he hated them, and he wanted to break free. So, one night he killed his mom and his sister, but he had already used his powers too much and he passed out. His dad Victor got pinned for the murders, but Henry wasn't free. Instead, he was placed under the care of Brenner, and Brenner experimented on Henry and realized he couldn't control him. So he put that chip in Henry's neck and started creating more kids like him, and that's how 11 and her siblings were born. They were supposed to be just like Henry, and seeing 11's powers, I'd say Brenner's plan was a huge success. Henry asks 11 to join him. Together they can reshape the world. But 11 refuses, so they have a fight, and Henry overpowers 11 and is about to kill her, but 11 channels her positive memories and she fights back. She sends Henry flying into the wall, and then she goes nuclear. Using all of her powers, she unknowingly opens a gate to the Upside Down and sends Henry into it. We then see Vecna, and sure enough, he has a tattoo that says 001. That's right, Henry Creel is Vecna. Episode 8 kicks off with Nancy still in Vecna's curse. Learning about his backstory, Nancy tries to run away, but Vecna isn't trying to kill her. No, he just wants Nancy to tell 11 about everything she's seen here, and then he lets her go. Straight into Steve's arms, I might add. We then cut to the prison where the Demogorgon is still running wild outside, killing Russian soldiers. Inside, after Joyce and Hopper have a mini catch-up session, they start exploring the prison and realize that the Russians are creating more Demogorgons to use as weapons. Not only that, but they have some of the Mind Flayer's particle dust locked up too. Holy crap. Well, that's not good. That's when Dimitri finds a vent that might lead them out of the prison, and they all get in. Meanwhile, back with 11, she wakes up from her dream. She then gets up and walks over to Nina, and lifts it about 15 feet in the air before gently putting it down. Her powers are back. Meanwhile, on their way to 11's location, Mike and Will are talking. Will shows Mike a painting he made of the whole crew fighting a big-ass dragon, and it's actually really sweet. Anyway, Mike is worried about 11 not needing him anymore, but Will says 11 and Mike will always need each other, but it's here that you can sort of read between the lines. Good old Will here is struggling with his... not only does he like boys, but I'm pretty sure he has a thing for Mike too. That's rough. Meanwhile, Brenner tells Eleven about Vecna and all of his attacks. So Eleven decides to check in with her friends and Hawkins via brain-mind powers. You'll notice that I never explained Eleven's powers, and that's because the show never explains Eleven's powers either. And this is a subtle hint that the writers are actually very lazy, actually. Anyway, Eleven sees Nancy telling everyone that Vecna showed her some horrible things, and they figure out his plan. Vecna needs to kill 4 people to open 4 gates in Hawkins, because apparently that'll help the Upside Down destroy Hawkins? It is explained, but not very well. Anyway, they realize that Vecna attacks people in their dreams, and so he will be very vulnerable when he tries to make his 4th kill, just like how Eleven is when she's spying on someone. So Max is going to use herself as bait to make Vecna vulnerable, and the others are going to head into the Upside Down and kill Vecna while he's after Max. Meanwhile, Hopper, Joyce, Dimitri, Murray, and a still tied up Yuri make it out of the prison, alive and well. Dimitri forces Yuri to tell them how to get to another plane, so that they can haul ass back to America. Back in Hawkins, Steve and the others decide they're gonna need weapons if they're gonna kill Vecna. So they steal some poor couple's RV and head over to a gun store. Don't you just love America? Back with Eleven, she says that she needs to go to Hawkins and help her friends. Brenner says that she still needs to train some more, but Sam disagrees. He is done with this Brenner bullshit. Sam then tells Eleven to pack her bags. They're leaving for Hawkins. Back in Hawkins, Steve and Nancy are straight up flirting with each other now. Sucks to be Jonathan, I guess. Lucas asks Max to reconsider using herself as bait, but Max says she knows what she's doing. Since Vecna attacks people using bad memories, she just has to find a good memory to hide in. That's actually pretty smart. Back with Hopper and the others, Yuri takes them to another plane, which is actually a helicopter. Realizing a helicopter is not a good idea, Hopper asks if they can call Sam Owens. Dimitri says they can, but it's complicated. Basically, you put in a request for a call, and then the government makes the call for you and connects you with the other side. Oh, and the KGB will be listening in to your whole conversation. Welcome to Soviet Russia.
You said you had a plane!
A plane!
Meanwhile, Nancy and the others get to the gun store and start stacking up on supplies. That's when Nancy sees Jason standing right next to her. Jason thinks she's being a sussy baka, so Nancy and her friends hurry up and get the hell out of there. But I have a feeling Jason's gonna come in after them. Meanwhile, Mike and the others make it to the location Susie gave them, and they see tire tracks, specifically military tire tracks. Yeah, Sullivan and his men are on their way to 11. Back in the facility, while Sam is restrained by some of Brenner's men, Brenner traps 11 inside the facility. He says she can't go to Hawkins now, it's too dangerous. But 11 has had enough of Brenner's lies and deception, so she rightfully blames Brenner for everything, saying that he's a monster. She then rips open the door and tries to leave, only for Brenner to inject her with a good ol' sleeping juice. 11 tries to kill Brenner, but passes out before she can. While the gang in Hawkins put together its weapons to kill Vecna, 11 wakes up, still feeling groggy from the drugs, and with a shock collar around her neck. Thanks, Brenner. Unfortunately, that's when Sullivan and his men show up to break into the facility. Brenner takes 11 through a back door while Sullivan's men kill everyone inside. As Brenner makes it out, he's shot by a sniper in a helicopter, and it looks like he's dead. And I sure hope so this time. The sniper then aims at 11, and Sullivan tells him to take the shot right in front of Sam. Damn. Lucky for us, that's when Mike and the others show up, and their arrival was all the distraction 11 needed. She gets to her feet, takes control of the helicopters, and with a loud scream, she brings that bad boy down on some military trucks, causing a huge explosion. Absolutely badass as always. After that, 11 is finally reunited with Mike and the others, and it's a really wholesome scene. That's when her shock collar comes off. Brenner is still alive, and he turned it off. 11 walks over to Brenner, who tries to ask 11 to understand what he did and forgive him, but 11 doesn't forgive him and leaves him to die in the desert alone. As he should. As 11 and the others drive away, Sullivan watches them go with fire in his eyes. He's gonna get them. 11 then tells everyone that they need to get to Hawkins tonight. Their friends are in danger. Speaking of their friends, Lucas, Erica, and Max head over to Vecna's house. It's time for them to set the trap. The final episode of Season 4 starts with Yuri fixing his helicopter, but the sneaky bastard sabotages it at the same time. Meanwhile, Hopper and Joyce finally have their romantic moment, which is interrupted by the phone. It's one of Sam's agents. Great timing. While she fills Hopper in on the situation, Nancy and the others go over their plan. Lucas, Erica, and Max will draw Vecna out into the real world. Dustin and Eddie will distract the army of demon bats guarding Vecna, so Nancy, Robin, and Steve can kill him. Simple enough. With that, they make their way to the Upside Down and head out. Meanwhile, Eleven and the boys realize they have no way of making it back to Hawkins in time to help their friends. So, Eleven comes up with a plan. She's gonna invade Max's mind at the same time Vecna does, and she's gonna fight him. That actually sounds super cool. But to do that, she needs a sensory deprivation tank, and Argyle knows just where to make one. Meanwhile, Lucas, Dustin, and Erica are setting up inside Vecna's house in the real world. They find where Vecna is, so Erica goes to signal her friends in the Upside Down. Unfortunately, a man sees her doing this and reports it to Jason. Oh no. Meanwhile, Hopper and Joyce realize they can't get back to Hawkins in time to help either, so they're gonna break into the prison and destroy the Mind Flayer particles. Since the entire Upside Down is like a hive mind, that should damage the Mind Flayer and give the kids some help. So Hopper, Murray, and Joyce are gonna go back in, while Dimitri will come with Yuri to get them back out. This plan is absolutely insane, and I love it, I live for it, and I'm all for it. Oh, and Hopper also finds a flamethrower, which is stupid convenient. Anyway, while Mike and the others set up a sensory deprivation tank for 11, Dustin and Eddie set up their distraction for Vecna's demon bats. Meanwhile, Robin, Nancy, and Steve are going through the woods, and Steve just up and confesses to Nancy. Again, everyone in this show has absolutely impeccable timing. Back in Russia, Dimitri manages to convince Yuri to stop being a two-timing son of a gun and actually help them. And it looks like Yuri is going to do just that. Boy, I love Dimitri. Back in Hawkins, Max and Lucas also make up. Lucas asks her out to a movie, and she says yes. They then get the signal from Erica and start luring out Vecna. And you know what to do when luring an evil bastard from the Upside Down. Follow the lights. While they do that, Mike and Eleven are talking, and Mike is about to say, "I love you," when Argyle interrupts. Seriously, no one in the show has a sense of timing. Anyway, Jonathan can see that Will is heartbroken over being in love with Mike, so Jonathan tells Will that he can always talk to him no matter what. Jonathan will always love his little brother. Aww. After that, the sensory deprivation tank is complete, so Eleven dives in and goes after Max. She then finds Max and Lucas immediately and waits for Vecna to take over. Max then sits down and admits that she wanted Billy to die, and so she now feels super guilty about it. This is enough for Vecna to take over her mind, so Eleven goes in too, and only to end up in a different memory. She's gonna have to find Max. After that, we get maybe the most metal scene in TV history. You see, it's time for Eddie and Dustin to distract Vecna's demon bats. And Eddie does just that by hooking up his guitar to a speaker and playing Master of Puppets by Metallica on the roof of a trailer with red lightning in the background. The demon bats take the bait, which lets Nancy, Steve, and Robin make their way inside, and that's when Jason and his lackeys show up outside Vecna's house. One of Jason's friends starts chasing Erica while Max is running away from Vecna. While Erica gets captured by Jason's buddy, the demon bats are making their way to Dustin and Eddie. Meanwhile, Max decides to use a happy memory to escape Vecna. She thinks of the school prom she went to with Lucas, where they kissed for the first time, and it works. Max ends up at the prom with no Vecna in sight. Meanwhile, Eddie and Dustin manage to get inside the trailer, successfully pulling off the greatest concert in human history, and they celebrate, rightfully so. Not bad for a bunch of D&D nerds. Meanwhile, Hopper, Joyce, and Murray make it inside the prison to discover something horrifying. The Mind Flayer's particles got out, went into the Demogorgons the Russians were making, and have killed everyone inside the prison. Anyway, while Steve, Nancy, and Robin make their way inside Vecna's lair, Eleven is making her way through Max's memories, looking for a way to find her. She finds one just as Max's happy memories start getting invaded by Vecna, but things go from bad to worse because Jason finds Lucas and Max, and he pulls a gun on Lucas and says if he doesn't wake Max up, Jason is gonna kill him. Oh boy. A lot of stuff happens right after this, like it all happens in one go, so pay close attention. In the prison, Hopper comes up with a plan to kill the Demogorgons. He's gonna lure them out, Joyce is gonna trap them from the control room, and Murray is gonna send them to hell with a flamethrower. Joyce has flashbacks of Bob dying, but Hopper says it's gonna be different this time, and they kiss. Oh, please God, let Hopper live. Anyway, while Dustin and Eddie fight off the demon bats, Nancy, Steve, and Robin get caught by Vecna's tentacles, and they start getting choked to death. While Hopper lures a Demogorgon after him, Dustin retreats back to the real Hawkins. Eddie's about to follow him until he decides to lure the demon bats away to buy Nancy and the others more time. Man, I love Eddie. Meanwhile, Vecna finds Max. Max tries escaping into another memory, but it doesn't work, and Vecna pins her against a wall. Back with Lucas, he tries convincing Jason that he's telling the truth, but when Jason doesn't listen, Lucas starts fighting him. In their scuffle, Max's headphones break, so Lucas can't pull her out anymore. No! Meanwhile, Vecna steps up to Max and is about to kill her when he starts floating. That's right, 11 has made it there. She tosses Vecna through some stairs and makes sure Max is safe. Meanwhile, Dustin refuses to let Eddie sacrifice himself alone, so he goes back into the Upside Down to save his friend. While Lucas is getting whooped by Jason and Eddie is surrounded by demon bats, Vecna and 11's long-awaited rematch begins. But it's not much of a fight. Vecna absolutely dominates 11, like it's not even close.
Glad you are here, 11.
He then takes 11 and Maxine to his own mind and ties them up in his lair. Well, this is horrible. Now cornered, 11 tries to appeal to Vecna's human side. She calls him Henry and tries to get him to stop, but that's when Vecna drops a bombshell on her. You see, shortly after he got there, Vecna found the Mind Flayer in the Upside Down. And since then, he's been working with it. That means all of the events of seasons 1, 2, and 3 were caused by Vecna. This is especially important to know because 11 didn't lose her powers at the end of season 3. Vecna stole them so he could open the gates to Hawkins. Holy schmoly, that was a lot to process. Meanwhile, all the good guys are in a serious trouble. Lucas is being beaten to a pulp by Jason, Eddie is being torn apart by demon bats, Hopper is about to be eaten by a demogorgon, and Nancy and the others are still being choked to death. All of this happens while Vecna forces 11 to watch him kill Max. And I'm not gonna lie, it's never been more over than it is right now. Back with Mike, they see that 11 is struggling. So Mike tells 11 he believes in her and says that he loves her, and that was enough for 11. She begins pushing back Vecna's tentacles. While Vecna begins his process of killing Max, Lucas fights back against Jason and knocks him out. He then watches as Vecna breaks Max's limbs and is about to kill her until 11 stops Vecna. Meanwhile, Joyce gets the Demogorgon off Hopper, and they make a run for it. While 11 holds off Vecna, Hopper and Joyce lead the Demogorgons to Murray, and he burns them all to a crisp. Well, except for the big one. This hurts the Mind Flayer, which frees Nancy and the others, and saves Eddie from the demon bats. Talk about coming in clutch. We then have 3 standoffs, Hopper versus the last Demogorgon, 11 versus Vecna in his mind, and Nancy and the gang against the real Vecna. Vecna says 11 and her friends are doomed, but 11's like, nah. While Hopper takes down the Demogorgon, 11 erases Vecna from the mind world. Steve and Robin then light Vecna on fire, and Nancy does the honors of gunning him down. Yuri and Dimitri then come get Hopper, Joyce, and Murray. It's over. The good guys won. Or did they? Nancy, Steve, and Robin go in to check on Vecna's body, but it's missing. Meanwhile, in one of the most gut-wrenching scenes of the entire show, Eddie says his goodbyes to Dustin, before he dies in his friend's arms. Oh no! Back with Lucas, he's holding Max, and she's in bad shape. Not only did Vecna break her limbs, he took her eyes too. The poor girl can't see anything, and what follows next is super confusing, so bear with me here. Max dies. With me so far? This means Vecna has killed the 4 people he needed to, so a huge rift starts opening up between Hawkins and the Upside Down, tearing the town to shreds. It kills Jason too, and that's one death I'm not sad about, actually. After that, Lucas holds Max and mourns, but then 11 says, "No, you're not going. Stay with me, I will get to that." 2 days later, Mike, 11, Will, Jonathan, and Argyle make it to Hawkins, and it's a mess. Buildings, roads, decimated, all of them. Multiple deaths and a lot of people evacuating the town. Anyway, they come back home and reunite with their family and friends, and Jonathan is super happy to see Nancy. I'm not so sure the feeling is mutual, though. Mike, 11, and Will then go to see Lucas and Max. Turns out Max isn't dead, she's in a coma. You see, Max's heart did stop when Vecna did his thing, but 11 used her powers to, restart her heart or something. So she was dead long enough for the bad things to happen, but now she's alive again. Kinda sounds like the writers want to have it both ways, but anyway, we see Steve, Dustin, and Robin take stuff to a shelter, and then they volunteer to help out. There, Robin finally talks to her crush Vicky and finds out that they have a lot in common. And Steve is super proud of her. Meanwhile, Dustin meets Eddie's uncle and tells him what happened. kind of. He leaves out the supernatural parts, but tells him that Eddie sacrificed himself to save the town, and he was a hero. It takes a lot to make a grown man cry, but you can tell that Eddie's uncle loved him. Meanwhile, Eleven and the others head to Eleven and Hopper's old home. They're gonna rebuild it so that Eleven can live there. There, Nancy and Jonathan talk, and they agree that they are okay. I do not believe that one bit, but okay, whatever you say. Meanwhile, Will tells Mike that because they're back in Hawkins, he can feel Vecna. He's alive and he's gonna keep coming back until they kill him, but Mike says they will kill him. Now, that I do believe. That's when a government car pulls up outside. While Eleven is miserable over not being able to save Max, she hears footsteps approaching. That's when her door opens, and she sees Hopper standing there. They hug, and yes, damn it, I am crying. After their reunion, Eleven meets with Joyce, and the gang is back together again. That's when Will feels something, and they hear thunder. Suddenly, the sky goes dark, and the upside-down particles start falling in Hawkins. Eleven and her friends follow the storm, and find flowers dying all around them. The upside-down is approaching, but they're not going to give up. No, they're going back to fight, and Eleven is going to lead them. Phew! And that was our recap of Stranger Things. While the quality of the later seasons are debatable, you can't argue that this is one of the most influential shows of all times. And I can't wait to see where Season 5 takes Eleven and her friends. But what do you think of Stranger Things? And who's your favorite character? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to drop a like and subscribe. And as always, thank you for watching, and we will see you next time.